Yes, you can hear me?
I'm just going to drag them over.
Stick is a PowerPoint presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you guys all for joining us today for, Michael and I were just talking, I think this is our 8th annual IT Matters Conference. It does not feel like it has been that long at all. I can't believe that. Thank you guys all for coming out today. If you guys haven't met me before, I'm Taylor Hicks. I'm the Information Security Officer at CFSB. We partner with Murray State every year to put this on, and then this is fall. In the spring, we do Security Matters over at Murray State. If you've never joined us over there, we'd love for you to come see that as well. We always have a great lineup of speakers at each conference, and I'm really excited today. We've got a wonderful lineup. I'm really excited about all the topics today. I can't wait to hear everyone. I hope you guys are excited too. Hope you guys get a lot out of today. We just love getting to partner with Murray State to put this on every year, and love seeing a great crowd. This is probably one of the largest crowds we've had at IT Matters, so I'm really excited about that. And without further ado, let's get started. So I'll turn it over to Michael. I think he's got a few things to go over, and then we'll dive right in. Thanks again for coming, everybody.
All right, welcome. So my name is Michael Ramage. For those that don't know me, I am the director of the Cyber Education and Research Center at Murray State, and we are happy to have you on campus, on our Paducah campus today for IT Matters. A couple of housekeeping items that I always get asked the question. Some of you have already asked me the question today. Where's the restroom? So I got to tell you where the restroom is before I do anything else. And if you walk out of here, down the hallway, keep walking down that direction, and you'll see it on the left if you need that. That's an important piece. We will have a couple of speakers, and then we'll have a break, and we'll have time for you to use the restroom if you need to. We'll also have some snacks set up outside. CFSB has brought their, what's the right term?
It's the big cent.
The big cent. Well, it's a big truck. But it'll be outside with some Dough & Co. cookies. So make sure you head out and visit them during our break. But before we start, I want to share something that I had not planned to share, but frankly, I don't know a better time to share this. So I wanted to share some breaking news, if you will. This past Thursday, Murray State received an email notification that we had applied for a Department of Labor grant to create a cybersecurity certificate program that would be 4 courses that students, perhaps non-traditional students, would be able to take and then get some real experience, go do an internship with a company, and then be able to get a job. It's for those individuals that maybe you've been doing something different. Maybe you have a degree in accounting and you don't like numbers anymore. You're still going to have numbers in security. But you want to do something different. So we wanted to provide an opportunity, a pathway in to those areas. And it's something that we've been talking about for some time. Our Board of Regents actually approved a cybersecurity certificate, I guess in June. It is something that I think that's needed. Anyway, we applied for a grant, and we found out on Thursday we got a 3-year, $1.5 million grant to create the cybersecurity certificate program. So we're really excited about it. A big piece of this is working with industry. Many of you that are in the room have talked to me about this, even during the summer, about this potential idea to see if it makes sense and to see if it's something that you would use, and there was a lot of support from the folks in the room. So we've just found out on Thursday, and if you do your math right, we found out on Thursday and the grant started October 1st. So that's 2 weeks behind already. So that's why you want to start a grant. But in all seriousness, we're still trying to learn exactly how they're going to be able to roll this out, or how we're going to be allowed to roll this out. We haven't put a press release out. We haven't done anything because, frankly, we don't know how to do that yet. We don't know what we're allowed to share or how we can share it. And frankly, I don't know if I was supposed to share it today, but I'm excited about it. So I wanted to pass that along. So that's something that is brand new, and you'll be hearing more about as well. But with that, our agenda today is really, there's the before the break and the after the break. Before the break, we're going to talk about AI. After the break, we're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about, in particular, some cybersecurity incidents and threats by industry for a couple of industries. So before the break, we're going to dig into AI. We decided that we can't have an IT conference without talking about AI. That's a rule nowadays. But in all seriousness, we hear so much about AI, but we want to talk about some of the very applied things that you can do with it. So we have two speakers that are doing things with AI that understand AI and how it can benefit us. And so we wanted to hear from a couple of perspectives. First is Dr. Marcia Combs. Dr. Combs is the director of our graduate program and cybersecurity management program. So if you want a master's in cybersecurity management, make sure you talk to her before the day's over. But she has been around Murray State for a long time. Before Murray State, she actually worked in the field. So she understands technology. She knows how to teach it. And as of late, we've been doing some really cool research on forensics, on mobile phone forensics, and using AI to help do that forensics analysis. And anyway, so she's going to share a little bit about one of the projects that we've been working on. And she wanted me to make sure I told you, ask all the really hard questions that you can. That she really likes that. No, I'm just kidding. She didn't say that, so don't ask the really hard questions. But you can. But anyway, thank you very much for sharing with us today. And she actually, let me say one more thing. I don't know how she got out of this for as many years as she has, and I'm going to blame it on Dana, because she's been around security matters planning and IT matters longer than I've been back at Murray State. Yet this is the first time she has spoken at one of our conferences. So I don't know how she got away with not doing this for that long, but I'm glad that you said yes and look forward to hearing from you. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. So I hope you can hear me because I can't stand still. I would not be able to stand back there, and so I'm going to move about. So my name is Marcia Combs. I've been at Murray State since 2005. I'm kind of aging myself. I'm an assistant professor. I'm in the College of Business, and as Michael said, I'm the graduate program director for the Masters in Cybersecurity. But what I'm here to tell you about today is a research project that several of us have been working on. So let me catch. Here's another thing. I've been mainly teaching online, and so it's amazing to see faces. So I miss faces, making eye contact, and if I pick on you up here, it's okay, right? All right. All right, so anyway, I'm here today to tell you about a project that several of the professors have been working on, and this was the brainchild of Dr. Randall Joyce. I don't know, Randall? You have to wave back there. So anyway, Randall came to several of us about a year ago. He says, I have this idea. He says, I want to buy a bunch of used, discarded cell phones. And I want to look at the data. I want to see what's on there. And the rest of us said, sure, let's do it. So what I want to share with you today is how we used Magnet AI to help us accelerate the analysis of the phone data that we were looking at. So here's a little outline of the project. You might ask, why did we do this? Why do we want to look at the data that we found on thrown away, discarded phones? The reason we wanted to do it was an awareness paper. People may not realize how much data is on their cell phone, and they're selling it on eBay. They may be throwing it away. And you may not realize the artifacts that are left on the phone. So it was an awareness paper. And so how we went about doing this is that we wanted to count the artifacts on the personal identifiable information, the PII artifacts that are on these phones. So what's an example of PII? Well, names, address, social security numbers, any information that we can use to uncover a specific user's identity. So that's what we were doing. So we were just collecting the data off of these phones and then counting it. Well, we found a huge amount of data. Now, we're still in the process of collecting the data, and we're still in the process of analyzing the data. And so what I'm going to show you today is some of the preliminary findings that we found. But before we do that, I would like to talk about briefly what the forensic process looks like. So over here, we have the devices that we collect. Now, it could be law enforcement that goes in and collects the devices themselves, right? So we have USB, we have hard drives, computers. We even have access to cloud and social media accounts, okay? Then we collect, using forensic tools, we collect all of that data off of those devices. The forensic analyst, using those same forensic tools, will make meaning of the data that was collected. After we analyze the data, then we present our findings. It could be an evidence report, or it could be a journal article, right? But this is the process that we went through. So here's Randall over here buying phones off of eBay. I think he enjoyed finding those phones in yard sales and eBay. Because ask Michael, it was like every week, Randall comes to the office, I just bought some more phones. And we're like, we got to collect more. But Randall found these phones, I think there were 75 to 100, or did you buy more? Yeah. And so he found these phones all over the United States. Then the other the other researchers, we analyzed the findings. And then ultimately, we're going to have a journal article to report our findings. But what we did, we used this tool called magnet forensics to collect and analyze those phones. So the question is who is Magnet Forensics? They're a privately held company, and they create forensic tools. The tools that we used was Magnet Axiom, and it has two components to it. The first component is the Axiom process, and that is the hardware and the software that actually extracts that binary data, the ones and zeros, off of the phone or the SIM card or the USB jump drive, right? Axiom Examine is the tool that we analyze the collected data with. There's a subpart of it called Magnet AI. That is the artificial intelligence component, okay? As Randall was extracting the data off of the devices, and it comes into Axiom Examine, we have the ability to classify, using artificial intelligence, we have the ability to classify those artifacts as they're coming in. Now, what it's classifying is it's looking at images, but it can also look at text messages, and it can look at other text as well. And so this classification occurs early on in the process as we're collecting the data. The part that I can't tell you a lot about is how Magnet Forensics does this. This is proprietary software. I cannot speak to the technical specifications of the AI algorithms that are being used. It's proprietary. If you want to know, become a developer and go work for Magnet, okay? But what I can tell you is that we obtained, and it's a proprietary, so you have to buy it. Randall obtained an education license for us to use the software. And so even though I can't tell you a lot about the algorithms, I can show you the results of how AI was able to classify the many, many images that were found on the phones. So who uses Magnet Axiom? Well, corporate security teams. As you know, a lot of the people that are working in the industry, as you know, people use their personal cell phone for business. There could be business artifacts on those cell phones. If you have an employee that uses his phone or her phone at the office and then they sell it and they don't properly wipe it, you just may have lost proprietary intellectual property for your company. So corporate security teams, law enforcement, federal agency, military, and of course, researchers. All right, so let's look at some of the data now. Some of these slides are going to be really busy, so I'm going to try to walk us through them. Obviously, this one's not busy, but the next one's really, really busy. So this is data collected off of one phone. This phone came from Providence, Rhode Island. I spent probably 20 plus hours on this phone, and so I feel like this young woman is a family member because I know a lot about her just by analyzing all of I've never met this person. So she was a college student. She was going to school for pharmacy. She was a pharmacy student. And this categories here was all provided by Magnet Axiom Examiner. So media, pictures, 21,154 images on one phone. Total artifacts is 36,000. That's between pictures, text messages, browser history, email calendars, documents, and here's an interesting piece of information. This phone was purchased, several of them. We also have her sister's phone. So after analyzing this phone and this other phone, we all of a sudden have two sisters. The other sister recorded, I have to giggle, she recorded an argument of the two daughters with the mother about marriage. And it's probably a 7-minute argument that she recorded. And all of us couldn't believe it. But this was all extracted. My whole point is this is just the categories of the artifacts that are found. And Magnet Forensics Magnet Forensics was able to extract this and categorize it for us. But what we're here today is to talk about AI and how it's going to help us use artificial intelligence to quickly analyze a lot of images. So we're here for images, not recordings of arguments with mothers and daughters. So let's zoom in a little bit closer. All right, so this is busy. So I want to walk you through it. This is an actual screenshot of Magnet Axiom Examine, and this is version 7.6, and this is a new release that just came out earlier this month, and so this is the newest, latest version. This is looking at the artifacts all on this one phone. You can see my phone, the name of the phone is 1 Providence, Rhode Island. All of the evidence, 36,000. If we look at media, we have 21,154. And then if we break this out, this is all of the media that is in this folder. AMR files, those are usually like with GPS directions. So if you ever have your GPS says, in 400 feet, turn right. A lot of those were the AMR files. So a lot of it was the GMS audio, right? Or GPS audio. And then regular audio, a lot of that was music, right? Photoshop files, and then pictures. This is where we're using AI. So 19,787 pictures. Whew. Now, if you think back to what I was just talking about with the forensic process, we have a forensic analyst, and you're my analyst. Okay, you can be my analyst for today. You, sitting at your desk, have your computers, you have to go through 19,000 pictures looking for PII. Now, if you're working for law enforcement, you might be looking for maybe a weapon, or you might be looking for a license plate, or maybe a building, right? So you may have something specific you're looking for. But as a researcher with us, you're going to look through 19,000 pictures to see if you can find any artifact of PII. Get your coat, get your popcorn, get comfortable, right? 19,700 pictures. That's a lot to visually inspect. But Magnet AI categorized those for us earlier. Very clever. So all of the images have been categorized and tagged. So what's the categories that it's tagging for us? So by default, Magnet AI will categorize pictures in these categories. So if there's an animal, and you might think about animals, why are we categorizing animals? It might be animals that are poached, illegally hunted. So it's usually those kind of animals that it's trying to tag. But it might be your cat, it might be your dog too, right? So all of AI, machine learning, has gone through all of those pictures and tagged them. So if it's a cat, it's tagged as a cat. If it's a cat that has a tattoo, it's possible it's going to get 2 tags, animal and tattoo, right? And so there's tattoos, weapons, vehicles, money, right? So this is pretty self-explanatory what all of these artificial intelligence has tagged these with. So let's look at which document. So remember, our research project is we're looking for PII. And one of those would be documents, right? So this next slide is an example of what we found using AI classification on images to find PII, and in particularly a document. All right, another busy slide, I'm sorry, because it's a screenshot. I wasn't about to do a demonstration because there's some things we don't want to see, okay? So this is a screenshot. Right here is my filter that I'm filtering on images for possible card or an ID document, all right? So now here's my filter. So now we're only looking, now you only have 730 images to go through. Woo woo, we're almost there, right? All right, so really 689. And so I'm on thumbnail view. So here's the thumbnail of all of the images. And I'm looking at the small thumbnail view. But you can see here I can scroll down and there's just more and more pictures. At first glance, you're like, this is just icons. Absolutely, there's a lot of icons on your phone. Every website you go to, if you're looking at social media, a lot of those pictures are downloaded to your phone. So yeah, that's gonna be there. But we're looking for something in particular. We're looking for a document. We're looking for PII, right? And so for me, as a little wannabe forensic analyst, what I did is went to thumbnail view and went to small, and I could quickly, and I have a really big monitor at the office. I could scroll right through it, and then if there was something of interest, then I could look at it, right? And that's exactly what I did. I do want to point out this right here before I go to the next slide. Magnet Forensics has in my opinion, some features in Examiner that promote the well-being of the forensic analyst. Because there are some pictures that are inappropriate and you don't want to see. You don't want to see it all day long, if that was your job all day long. So there's this block media to where images that are inappropriate are blurred and that you don't have to look at it all day. There may be audio that you don't want to listen to the video that has audio. You may not want to listen to it. So you can actually turn off or mute that audio. So this is a whole other branch of forensic research, is what we call analyst well-being. All right, so I just wanted to let you know what that was. So let's scroll down. So this next slide is some of the findings, the artifacts that I found once I scrolled down. And I redacted, as you can see, I redacted most of it. This young lady had her birth certificate on her phone. Why do we care if her birth certificate's on there? Identity theft. There's a huge amount of e-waste that consumers, when we throw away our laptops, we throw our tablets, our phones, has all this data. Most of the e-waste actually leaves this country and is shipped to other countries. There's industries that people collect this e-waste, extract the data, and find artifacts like this to promote identity theft. Here's her insurance card, her Department of Health ID. This was part of her internship. Birth certificate, certification of completion. Here's her background results. She had to do a background check before she could do her internship at the hospital. And so there's the results of her background check. And then here is an invoice with names, address. I call this PII. So we use artificial intelligence to go through 26,000 images, and with 3 minutes, I was able to find this. I thought that was interesting. Does this bother anybody, or is it just me? Am I just a paranoid professor? Yes, you should be scared. And then you need to ask yourself, do you delete the information off your phone? All right, so this is a research. This is what we did with research, but let's say that you worked for law enforcement. How could we use artificial intelligence and magnet forensics for the purpose of law enforcement? So this time, what I did, same phone, same exact phone, I just changed my filter. And so I changed my filter to possible vehicle, could be a car or a truck. So let's say that you work for law enforcement, and the case that you're working on, you're looking for a particular car. So here's a filter. Since AI has already tagged all of this, now look at all of the cars that it found. Now sure, the little icon of the bus and the car, those don't count, right? But I'm looking at a small thumbnail view again, but look how many cars that it did come out with. Now what I thought was really interesting at this case is, so I exported, here's 4 pictures that I exported out and enlarged so we could see them a little bit better. So let's take a look at this one right here. When I saw this in the small thumbnail view, or even the large, I did not, all I saw was a foggy night with a light. That's all I saw. I did not see this car in the bottom left-hand corner. But AI, Magnet AI found it. And I'm like, oh, there's a car. Now this one I thought was interesting too. This is somebody using this phone looking out the top window, the window at the top of second floor of their house, and it's a tree service. If you were law enforcement, maybe a crime happened, and maybe somebody worked with this tree service, and now you have some evidence that they were in the neighborhood at a certain time. Do you see how all of this works? Over here, I found this one was very interesting too. I didn't see a car, but Magnet AI did see a car. You see there's a little bit of a car right there. Now, of course, here's a false positive, which is a cover for an album. It says, "Stuck in traffic, 40 relaxing songs for a stressful day," right? So that's a false positive. But it's still, the whole point of it is using AI to accelerate the analysis of all of these images. So artificial intelligence has contributed to digital forensics in several ways. Forensics triage. So you may work for law enforcement and you have Randall's buying hundreds of phones. And we have to I'm gonna pick on you all day, Randall. And so we have to quickly go through all of those phones, and so AI can help us triage the phones. Which phone works, which doesn't, which has evidence, which doesn't, so you can quickly triage them. We can also use it for log analysis and natural language processing. Now, Magnet AI will do this for us too. I just did not show you the analysis of the text messages. All I can say is wow on the text messages that this young woman sent and received. And AI categorized those for me as well, all right? We also use AI for network traffic analysis. If you've ever used Wireshark and if you've ever analyzed network traffic, there's a lot of it. And the human eye cannot recognize patterns near as well as AI. So we can quickly categorize network traffic that is abnormal or malicious and what is normal, abnormal to normal. Facial recognition. A very cool, which I think is cool, I think this whole thing is cool, but one piece of this, let's say that we have a bunch of evidence that we have collected, and maybe we're looking for a missing child, and we have a photograph of that missing child. Magnet AI, what it can do, we can import the image of that missing child and ask AI, find a similar picture throughout this whole data set. And it will quickly do that. So if there is an image of that missing child on this phone, we can find it really fast. And that helps bring children home, or at least helps us prosecute people, all right? Another thing is, and it just helps us speed up that data analysis with the evidence and backlog of evidence. And I think my time's getting close. So here's just 3 slides of some other interesting pieces, other interesting artifacts that I found on this phone. I did not use AI to do it. It was just data analysis. So I was able to export the phone logs off of this phone. This is the incoming calls by duration. I've redacted all of the names. I know who she talked to and how long she talked to them. John is her boyfriend. This was incoming. John called her a lot. This is by minute. Here's Dad. Dad called her, but not as much. Mom hardly, I don't know who these other people are. But this shows us that John called her a lot. These are outgoing calls. My interesting takeaway, she called her dad more than she called her boyfriend. I love that. But if this was a crime, if there's a crime that's been committed, I can identify behavior on who she's calling and how long she's talking to them. And this is a text message summary. So these are all the ingoing and outgoing text messages to John. Here's ingoing, outgoing to Mom, but I guess Dad doesn't text because there's no messages. There weren't text messages to Dad. I just found that interesting. So I leave you with this. And then I ask you, did you properly wipe and delete everything off of your old phone? Thank you. Okay.
How should they get rid of their phone?
Oh, well, I knew you were going to say that. So that is completely up to the manufacturer of your phone, right? And if you have an iPhone, it is dependent upon the iOS version that you use. So a quick Google search of Apple's website for the iOS version that you're using is what you should do. And there are straight up instructions. All right, so some of us don't have an iPhone, and so it's the same thing with an Android. I found this Wired article very, very helpful, very easy to read and concise on how to properly reformat, factory reset your phone. But then I think our next research project is we're actually going to do this and then quantify if it actually worked. Yes, sir?
Is everything you did in this research project completely legal?
It had to be because we ran it through legal counsel at Murray State.
Actually, let me add, before we started looking at one phone, we had a phone call with the state police.
Yes, that's true. I forgot that.
At what point do you want to be involved?
Yes.
Because we didn't want to do anything. Everything that we did, actually the scary part is, you can buy the software, you can go on eBay like we did, So there is nothing that we got to do, albeit the software was cheaper because of our education. There was nothing that we did that Joe Schmo couldn't do as well.
And we did go, through the university proper channels of the IRB review and legal counsel, and had several phone calls to state police to make sure that if we found inappropriate material, that we wanted to make sure that we reported it to the state police and to proper channels.
Well, I'm less worried about what you did than what Michael did. But anybody can do that.
That is true. I hate to say that, that is true. And so that is why the driving force of doing this research project and eventually come out with a journal article is for awareness. Because I think we were all, when I first showed the artifacts found, I wish you could have seen what I saw looking at your faces. You all went, it was a little alarming.
There's a question. I saw a hand a minute ago. Question? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know if the phones were white before you got them?
We do, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, go ahead. No, we do not. But magnet forensics, the tool, there is some metadata that will flag it if it had been deleted and then it was restored from the SIM card because it could be, just because it's deleted doesn't mean it's gone.
This person could have just been dumb and not left the phone.
That is correct, yes. But a particular artifact, we can say if it has been attempted to be deleted and it was recovered.
You can also carve the rest of the file system, get photos, and I'm a Magnet user.
Oh, good, yay. Oh, all the questions go to him.
We have it in our agency, but I am curious though, in the paper that you're producing, are you including the number of PII that you're finding as far as the pictures that have EXIF data that matches GPS coordinates for our home?
Okay, so there were several images that had GPS location on it. And all of the researchers, we have spent a lot of time on what PII to include and what to count, what to quantify, what to leave in, what to take, we have not it's so much. We haven't firmed up the answer to that question, and actually it's kind of slowed us down on our research, is because that's the tricky point where we are right now.
The biggest part of that comes into play, for anyone that's interested, the biggest part of that, the pictures and the exit data on the back of that, where that comes into play a lot of times is in child abductions. If somebody finds a photo online of a child that they like, then they check the exit data, find the GPS, and they
Yes.
find the child.
Yes, yes.
Is there any device you look at that didn't find
Of the collection, each of the researchers were assigned a pool of phones, and I got the Providence, I got the Rhode Island ones. And there was one phone that didn't have a lot of data on it, didn't have PII on it, but I analyzed the call log, and there were a lot of incoming phone calls and outgoing phone calls that were less than 10 seconds. And then we kind of put our heads together and we thought maybe this was a burner phone for illicit meetups for whatever, because it was just a lot of phone calls, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, so I could have been a drug dealer, I don't know. So while I may have not found PII, we did find human behavior patterns on phones.
There are some phones that I'll say that the software that we use isn't the best software for breaking a PIN code. So there's other software that can do that better that we didn't pay for. So there are some that we didn't break into. I say break into, either had a PIN code or the software didn't immediately undo it. There were certainly some of those, but as far as data, that, and let me if I can add, that it's not just personal stuff. There was I think it was Rhode Island, there was a legal assistant that had all the customer records.
Oh, it was the sister. It was the sister of this phone. She was a paralegal, and there was a document that had the meeting time of depositions. Had all their names, where the depositions, and what lawyer was conducting the deposition. And I asked a lawyer, I said, well, why do I care about this? He said, witness tampering. He said, if I know, I mean, if we wanted to be nefarious about it and go tamper with witnesses before their deposition, I know their names and I know when they are having their deposition.
So it's not just your personal, I mean, clearly protect your personal, but I would say most businesses in here either you have a BYOB policy or BYOD.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Sorry, I don't have BYOD policy, or you're issuing a phone. So what happens when those phones are disposed of? And we did phones, new phones, older phones, even
Sure.
really old phones.
Yep.
Anyway, it's really interesting.
All right. Do we have time for one more question? And then what's our time, Michael?
I think we're okay on time.
Okay.
So how long did it take you typically to extract the data? So if you have the phone in your possession, you start the process, to the time you got the data off, you don't need the phone anymore, what's that time?
So I did not do the extraction part. Randall Joyce did the extraction part, so he could probably address that question better than I could. There, you know I was going to get you in it, Randall.
So, being on this quick extraction is fairly cool. Usually it took anywhere from an hour to depending on the size of the phone. So, if you're getting up there towards anything above 16 gigs would probably be 2 to 3 more hours after that point. So, like I said, just depending on the size of the device.
And to dovetail off of that question, you might ask, how long did it take Magnet AI to classify all of these images? And I'll do a typical IT response, it depends. And so it depended on how many images there were, and it depended on the hardware of the laptop or the computer that we were using to classify it. But the big takeaway for me on the Magnet AI classification, it wasn't a huge burden. So I would turn on the classification, or he would classify it early, and it would be maybe 20 minutes, like this phone, maybe 30 minutes. And I had an old laptop. But the takeaway is the AI classification was not a huge burden, and it was not a huge time-consuming process. We were really kind of surprised on how fast it went.
So you touched on this a little bit. I wanted to ask about passcodes. How much did passcodes slow you all down? What does Magnet do versus what does it not do?
And that's an extraction question.
Okay.
So, the way it actually went through the extraction is we're actually running exports against the device. So, depending on the data the phone is on and off in the sales mode, a lot of times the phone where it's developed stable, the export is actually getting some of the newer phones have just very easy
For true law enforcement, and maybe you can answer this better, I've been told that for Apple devices are easier than Android devices because they're more standardized. It's just a matter of how long. And Android, most of them are, with the right software, are gettable. It's just a matter of how long.
Android devices tend to be easier to crack
Oh,
as far as PIN codes in my experience. Apple devices, depending on when you get the device, if it's before first unlock or after first unlock, depends on how much time it's going to take to crack it.
Oh.
And Magnet has specific software that they've acquired and purchased. They've purchased a couple companies that specialize in Apple products. But as far as from a base level, Android's typically have been easier to get into, but the latest Android OS versions are getting on par with Apple as far as passcode and PIN code security. It could take anywhere, it just depends on where you're at. If you get it before it's been restarted, 4-digit passcode usually takes about 2 or 3 hours. 6-digit passcode takes 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
8-digit passcode takes 2 or 3 months. If it's after first unlock, like it's already been unlocked, it's already on, and all you need is a passcode, reduce all those back ones. So 4-digit passcode is usually about an hour. 6-digit passcode, you get in a day. 8-digit passcode or more, you're looking at months to years.
Wow.
And Ray, to your question earlier, that piece of software that is an add-on or another magnet piece of software, we could not get because we weren't law enforcement.
And it's very expensive.
Yeah.
Did you find more data on, which one did you find more data on, Apple or Android devices?
I don't believe we were able to unlock or extract from any Apple phones. It's my understanding these are all Android phones that we were looking at. Is that right, Randall? Yep. So this was a joint effort. I want to say thanks to Randall and Ferris. Ferris is back there in the corner. Ferris has been analyzing phones too, and then Michael. So this has been a joint effort with several of us at the university. So thank you for your time.
All right, so, I gotta stay over here. The high school days getting over. First of all, that research on the phones, I have used that, anecdotally so many times talking to people that if you really want, I quote, could have traded in my phone when I bought a new one last summer, and they were going to give me $5 for my phone. The risk, even if I wiped it, the risk of them pulling something off of it was way more than $5. You just beat it up, shred it, beat it to a pulp. That's how you know that it's safe. Anyway, I don't know, a couple months ago, John Truitt, our next speaker, shared a little bit about how companies can use AI to make them more efficient. He did a demonstration over at Sprocket about some different pieces of utilizing AI and ChatGPT for different functions. And it was a really good discussion. Actually, it was really interesting. And it was interesting enough that I wanted him to share with us as well. For those that don't know John, actually, after you and I talked about this, you talked last year, didn't you?
Last year? I don't think.
Was it the year before?
No, it's been longer.
Has it been
Yeah,
longer than
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Maybe it just feels like last year.
Yeah.
John has been a technology leader in our community for some time. Is a co-founder of Kaleo here in town. Has quote retired, and I'll put some air quotes around that because he seems to be busier than ever. And in one of those retirement jobs, which he started before he retired, is serving as chair for Sprocket. If you don't know Sprocket, I know Monica shared last year, the director of Sprocket. If you haven't checked it out, go over to the Coke plant, check it out, what they're doing. If you haven't been there in the last couple of years, it's changed a lot. They're doing some really cool stuff. John serves as the chair of the board for Sprocket, and his vision and leadership is really important, not just to Sprocket, but frankly, to growing tech in our region. So with that, John, I'll let you share. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Thank you. Oh,
It's just a-
yeah, just left and right.
All right, thank you. So I'm John Truitt. I've been in IT since the early 90s, and I've done a lot of different kinds of things in IT, and IT has been very good to me in my career. How many of you here are IT professionals? How many are students? Okay. All right, cool. So I want to talk about some of the sort of the bigger questions around AI, some of the state questions of AI, what's going on, that kind of thing. For some of you, if you've been digging into a lot of AI, some of this is going to seem pretty familiar. But I'm just fascinated by how AI is going to impact all of us. Having lived through the internet revolution, I was an IT guy before that and then went through that. I feel like AI is going to be a bigger disruptor to everything than the internet was. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of that. So one of the things about this presentation is I've used a lot of AI in the presentation. So the images and some of the content, things like that are actually, so this particular image here and all the slides had AI involved in them. So this is actually PowerPoint. I call it a rudimentary AI at this point, providing intelligence into how, creating stuff for your presentation. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, I see what I'm doing wrong. There we go. This is DALL-E 3 creating an image. And you can see, there's orders of magnitude greater capabilities between this AI and that AI. And so there's a lot of the images that you're going to see today actually were created in DALL-E 3. If you don't know what DALL-E 3, that's OpenAI's image generator. So you feed it text, you tell it what you want, and it generates an image on that. We'll look at a number of interesting aspects about that kind of stuff. So first thing, what is AI really? And I think this is an important question because the whole world is talking about AI right now, but I don't think a lot of people really understand what it is today. That we get sort of these thoughts in our head about AI, artificial intelligence, and the machines are coming and all that kind of stuff. But AI today really isn't intelligent. It's not artificial intelligence. What it is machine learning. So if you think about machine learning is creating an algorithm. I tell you what, how do I get my notes up on here? Where'd he go? Do I need to exit or can I, let's see. There we go. Perfect. Oh, no, that's not going to do. Do we need to redo this? Yeah. No, yeah, that one. Oh, it's not going to let you do it? Well, okay, I'll tell you what. Let's do this, because I do have some notes on here that I really need. So machine learning is a little bit more sophisticated, same thing that computers have always done. You create an algorithm, that algorithm is going to do something, and so on your, grab this. There we go. So with AI, the difference is you create the algorithm and then you train the algorithm. Whereas typically with computers, whatever you're doing, whatever kind of software you're using, you're creating an algorithm to do some sort of function. With machine learning, you're actually training it in the function to get better at it. So you get this big data set, and then you're going through some sort of process, maybe it's simple, maybe it's very sophisticated, to eventually train it to where it's really, really good. So the earlier in the training process, the more poorly it's doing of a job of whatever it's supposed to do. And then later in the training process, it gets better, and it gets better, and it gets better. But what it isn't doing is it's not intelligence. This is the way I like to think about the marker of intelligence is creativity. That if you see something that's creative, that is intelligence. And machine learning is not creative. All it's doing is it's learning it to get good at whatever it's been programmed to do. It eventually, like ChatGPT, it could seem like it's intelligent, but that's not really what it's doing. It's just gotten very, very good at predicting something. And that's where AI is today. So let's talk about this idea of creativity for a moment. That one of the things that AI is really not very good at is creating jokes. And so I want to read to you, I got ChatGPT to try to create some IT jokes. One of my pet peeves is that there are no good IT jokes. Like, there are very few of them, right? So if I've done presentations to IT crowds before, stuff like that, I want to have a joke. There are no good IT jokes. I don't know why. I guess what we do is not funny. I don't know what it is, but and AI has not solved that problem. So let me give you a few of the jokes that I asked ChatGPT to create for us today, and we'll just see how bad this is. Why was the IT support specialist always calm during a crisis? Because they had techno stress. Yeah, it's just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. How many IT support specialists does it take to change a light bulb? None. They just ask the user to reboot the room. All right, I like this one. This one is really terrible. I asked it to create a PC tech, create a joke that's a PC tech, a network engineer, and a programmer walk into a bar. This is what it says. A PC tech, a network engineer, and a programmer walk into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "Sorry, we don't serve your type here." The PC tech responds, "That's okay. We're used to dealing with access denied messages." The network engineer chimes in, "Yeah, and we're experts at finding workarounds." And the programmer adds, "And if all else fails, we'll just write our own drink ordering app." They all laugh and find a table where they can enjoy a drink without any authentication issues. It's just awful. It's really, really bad, right? I'll say this. However, if you're trying to create dad jokes, it's pretty good at that. So let me give you a couple of these. What's an IT support specialist's favorite type of music? Heavy metal, because they deal with so many hardware issues. I think that's a pretty good dad joke. I do. That's a groan-worthy joke, right? What's an IT support specialist's favorite snack? Computer chips and cookies. What it's doing is it's trying to predict what you want it what you're wanting it to give you, right? And ChatGPT, especially 4, has gotten really, really good at that. But it's not creative, right? And that's one of the things about humor is it really does take creativity because you're doing things in humor that are unexpected. See, it's designed, and pretty much a lot of the AI today works this way, it's trying to predict what you're expecting. But humor works in this creative way around the unexpected. And so I think that's why you probably see it doesn't work. So in terms of creativity, I don't expect anytime soon to see AI doing true creativity. I think that's going to be a marker of a whole new era for us. Okay, next big question. Is AI going to take my job, right? Are the machines going to come and I'm going to be out of a job because it's going to be doing my job? And I think there's several different ways to think about this question, but I like to sort of begin with, okay, well, what is it doing? What is it really good at? Because that will start to tell you where is it going to go and who is it going to impact. And if you think about what it does really, really well, it basically is no different than all the rest of the history of computers. It's really the same. It's taking a lot of data, it's crunching a lot of numbers, and it's doing a very, very good job of analyzing that and spitting out information and occasionally taking actions, right? It's a super sophisticated calculator, that sort of thing, right? So if we think about that, then we can start to think, okay, well, what sorts of jobs, as AI is able to train and do the kinds of things that highly sophisticated number crunching is good at. So if you think about Dr. Combs' presentation for a moment, looking at this just gigantic amount of data on this cell phone and very rapidly sorting that into useful information where you could just scroll through a screen of thumbnails real quick and find something that you're interested in. Well, computers are really, really good at that, and AI is really not different, but it is going to present some different things that we want to think about. So one of the things is it's going to create whole new career fields for IT professionals. And I'll give you a couple that have already been created. So prompt engineer. You go out and you start looking for prompt engineer, you'll find that there's jobs on LinkedIn and jobs on Indeed and stuff like that. Well, a prompt engineer is a person who's trying to help the front end of the application. So ChatGPT, you've got the back end, which is the actual AI, and then you have the front end, which is the interface, that chat window interface, and that's called the prompt. And it's how the prompt is going into the AI engine and how it's going to be interpreted and what are we not thinking about as software developers in terms of what these prompts might be and how do we tweak that and how do we make it better and those kinds of things. That's the prompt engineer. And another one is in DevOps. There's going to be AI DevOps engineers. There's already job postings for that sort of thing out there where in DevOps, DevOps is going to be impacted big time by AI because a lot of functions within DevOps are going to be the things that you're trying to do in DevOps, the things you're trying to create, AI is going to be able to assist in that and shorten the development cycle. And so an AI DevOps engineer. So if you're an IT professional, either already working in DevOps or you're thinking about moving into DevOps, then AI is going to be a big deal and you probably want to spend some time with that. I want to give you a couple of my own predictions. I'm sure a lot of you probably have your own predictions about this. Here's two of mine. The first is I think AI is going to make good IT professionals a lot better, and I think it's going to make bad ones a lot worse. And here's what I mean by that. A really good competent IT engineer, if you think about it, what you have to deal with is the constant change and the glut of information coming at you. So even the operating systems, if you're working in servers, the server operating system is changing every few years and sometimes radically. And so how do you keep up with that? I knew how to do this one thing, but I haven't done it in a few years. How am I supposed to do that now? AI is going to assist with that and help you through that process very, very rapidly. And if you're competent and you know what you're doing, then that is really effective. So I think a lot of AI for competent engineers is going to be very, very, very positive. It's going to make your work a lot easier. However, for I'm just going to call them this way, an incompetent IT support engineer, somebody who, as we would say, knows enough to be dangerous, right? So they know how to get into that server, and they know how to do things, but they don't really understand how things work. And so they're dealing with a problem, and they want to get AI to help them, so maybe they go to ChatGPT or whatever, and they put in a poorly worded question, because again, they don't really understand what they're dealing with, and the answer from ChatGPT is, oh, you need to reinitialize the RAID array. Well, a competent IT professional is going to laugh at that and say, that's stupid. An incompetent IT professional, someone who doesn't know what they're doing, might just go, oh, okay, well, how do I do that? And, and then they go through and they reinitialize the RAID array, and everything's gone, and now you're spending the next day and a half trying to recover this whole thing, right? So I think that's one of the things that we're going to see happen. The other thing that I think that's going to happen is this is going to have a big negative impact on entry-level IT jobs. One of if you think about the internet, for instance, when the internet came along, it destroyed whole industries. And it built whole new industries. So phone book, there were phone book companies, right? That's what they did. They sold phone books, right? There were a lot of map companies and stuff like that. And the whole industries just went away. And bookstores are dying. Video rental stores are gone. That kind of stuff. And AI is going to do that kind of thing. And one of the areas that AI is going to do that in is in customer service. In that low-level side of customer service. Not advanced customer service, but where you're answering all the basic questions. And we're already seeing this. We're seeing this shift with chatbots being introduced where it's kind of sort of taking that over. Well, you can imagine in IT, your entry-level IT job where you're, say, on the first-level help desk, you're taking a certain set of basic calls and solving a certain set of basic problems. And if it goes beyond that set, you're sending it on to a higher level desk to handle, right? Super standard. AI can replace all of that bottom tier of that. Well, what that then does is it creates an issue for getting into IT. Because if you can't get an entry-level IT job because there aren't that many of them because AI is taking that over, and you don't have the experience that you need to have a more advanced IT job, how do you make that transition? And so I think what we're going to see is a kind of shift in how a lot of people come into IT to move more to 4-year degrees and advanced degrees and stuff like that, and not so much that sort of just flying by the seat of your pants, know somebody, get that entry-level job, get some experience, and move up. Even things like getting certified in, with a certain certification, maybe an A+ certification or something like that, and then expect that you're then going to get an entry-level job, I think is going to be a lot more difficult in the future. All right, I wanted to show how an IT professional might utilize ChatGPT today, and I'm not sure how this is going to work. I just realized, let's see. Well, I'm probably going to have to, let's see what happens. Yeah, I had to switch over to this other, do this, I'll just read these to you. That wasn't a video. That was actually going to ChatGPT. Okay. Oh, it didn't. It's not going to let me do it over here either. Well, wait a minute. Let me try this. No. Well, I'll just have to tell you some of these. All right. I do this. This is interesting. This is really interesting. Go to ChatGPT. I definitely recommend using 4 for this kind of stuff. And ask it, how can you help IT professionals do their job? And it's this really interesting list of things that it will give you. Some of which are pretty obvious, helping you with documentation, for instance, right? So if you don't have the documentation for something and you need documentation for that, you can go to ChatGPT, say, hey, I need documentation for this. It's likely going to be able to help you through that process. If you want some instructions on how do you do a certain procedure, there's a pretty good chance of that. I asked it the other day, what do I do with a blue screen stop message? How would you handle that? And it was actually pretty good. It gave me what I would consider a very good set of things to try to identify what is causing this blue screen, right? So a lot of that kind of stuff that you would kind of expect, but then other things as well, such as user interaction, giving you advice about the best way to interact with a user in certain conditions and things like that. About organization, how to better organize your work and approach a particular kind of IT work or IT project or something like that, helping you with those kinds of things. So there's a lot of things that I think this is the sort of stuff that, again, I think is going to help IT professionals a lot in their jobs. Because it's not just, oh, I'm going to go ask it this technical question and get a technical answer that I need, whereas today I might Google that, and if my Google foo is good, then I can ask exactly the right question, and I'll hopefully find an answer in the first page or something like that. It's much better at that. I'm going to ask my question, and hopefully I'm clear about it, and then it will return the answer rather than a list of web pages. So hopefully you've all been on ChatGPT at this point, and you know what I'm talking about. I think that's going to become the norm for us in IT to do that sort of thing. But it goes way beyond that, way, way beyond that. I wish I had the list here because it was really, really good. This is an image that Dolly created. And it's really interesting because I could just tell it, I want a frustrated dad who's trying to put together some furniture, right? And this is what it created. I don't know what kind of furniture he's trying to put together, but he definitely looks I've definitely had that look on my face. I don't know if you've had doing this kind of work, but all right. So here's a big question. Can you trust it? Can you trust what it's telling you? And this is one of the main questions that I've been asking and interacting with this whole category, because I want to know, all right, is in its life cycle, has it trained enough, like ChatGPT and other AI, being AI and that kind of thing, has it trained enough to truly be good and trustworthy? And if you couldn't see this, but in where ChatGPT 4 was, where it was going to go on that last screen, it had a disclaimer at the bottom. It said, remember, while I can provide a wealth of information on these topics, it's always crucial for IT technicians to verify any solutions or suggestions in their specific environments, considering company policies, safety protocols, and individual system configurations. I felt like it was the sort of thing where it says, always consult your doctor before, blah, 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 right? But the reality is, this is a really big deal. This actually is, you want to pay attention to what it's telling you when it tells you something like this. Because here's the problem. So one of my current interests is the differences in cultural thinking between East and West. Right? So in Western culture, we have what's called individualist culture. And we're seeped in it. And we don't think outside of it. In the East, the Middle East, and in Asia, South Asia, East Asia, they live in what's called collectivist culture. And it's radically, radically different. And so I've been really, really interested in that. Unfortunately, I can't show you ChatGPT again. But what I did was, I said, okay, I want a list of books on this subject. And so it gave me this great list, about 8 books. It gave me, the first one on the list was Individualism and Collectivism by Harry Triandis. It gives me a description. It's a textbook. It's expensive. I didn't buy it, but it looks really, really good. The second book on the list was the Geography of Thought, How Asians and Westerners Think Differently and Why. And I'm actually reading that book right now, and it's fascinating. It goes through, again, it's got 8 books on here. Number 7 in the list is Who Decides and How? Preferences, Uncertainty, and Policy Choice in the United States and India by Mumba Mukherjee and Benjamin Bagozzi. And this is the description that it gave of this book. A comparison of decision-making processes in two very different cultures. The authors explore how cultural values influence policymaking and preferences in the US, which is more individualistic, and India, which is more collectivist. That book doesn't exist. It totally made up that book. The other 7 books in the list all exist. They're real books, great reviews, the description matches up. And right there in the middle of the list, it just made up a book. How am I supposed to know that, right? Well, obviously I'm checking these books out on Amazon, that kind of thing, and I discover, wait a minute, this book's not on Amazon. I Google it. Nothing, not a single hit on the book name and the authors. Well, okay, if in a list of books that I've asked for on a specific topic in which it gives me great answers, it actually makes up an answer. Well, okay, now wait a minute. If I ask it for a certain set of things that I should do, say a security protocols that I should follow or whatever, and it just makes up something or leaves out something, it might have changed that equation for me in a very significant way. So here's the thing. This is why I say, again, I think it's going to be really good for competent IT professionals and really bad for ones that really don't know what they're doing, is this kind of stuff, where it's not accurate enough. And the fact that it would make up something and make it look real. For example, if you ask it to come up with a joke, what it will do is it'll tell you existing jokes, right? It's not actually going to create a joke. If you tell it to create a joke, then it's going to do that, right? And that kind of specificity in your questions is really, really important. And if you ask the question in the wrong way and you're thinking about it one way, but it's analyzing it in a completely different way, it may actually think that what you want is you want it to make something up. And, maybe you didn't want that. Okay, so how far along are we really, and this is where I've got my videos, we're going to see if this works. How far along? So when I did the well, let me say this first. So I wanted to, I asked DALL-E to create me a sign, a street sign that said, "Are we there yet?" And this is what it created. And so I think the answer is no. That's the way I'm going to take this. I don't know what that is, but it's not "Are we there yet?" And but this past summer, when I did this presentation, not this one, but something similar to a bunch of entrepreneurs, I wanted to show what it was like to utilize various AI engines to create something that entrepreneurs would be interested in. So the first thing I did was, this is actually a presentation totally created by AI. The content is created, the video is created, everything was done by AI on how entrepreneurs could use AI. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't, I think I can still play it.
Entrepreneurs can achieve enhanced productivity, optimized decision-making, and highly personalized customer experiences. Imagine a world where AI algorithms automate repetitive tasks, freeing up valuable time and resources for entrepreneurs to focus on innovation and strategic initiatives. AI can analyze vast amounts of data in real time, empowering entrepreneurs to make informed decisions faster and more accurately than ever before. Furthermore, AI enables entrepreneurs to deliver highly personalized experiences to their customers. By leveraging AI technology,
So this is, it's a little generic, but it has a lot of good information, and you could actually get it to give you more depth of information on this. And it's not a bad presentation. It's not a bad little video. It created about a 2-minute video. And it took me, again, I didn't write any of it. I told it I just told ChatGPT what I wanted. It created the outline. I told it create create a script for video. It created the script for the video based on the outline it created. I took that script over to Pictory AI and had it create a video for me, which it did. And I had it put music in and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if it was playing. I couldn't hear it. And I thought, you know what? This is a decent job. It may not be, the best, but it's not bad. I'm going to give it a B, right? And it's pretty good. But then what I did was I wanted to create a Southern cuisine Indian, an upscale restaurant, Indian restaurant in Paducah. And I wanted a sort of the gamut of marketing stuff for that, including a mobile ad for it. And so I had ChatGPT create, first of all, I created the name Saffron Grove, and that was out of probably about 50 names, most of which were really stupid, but I kind of like that one. So, but all of the work that I did to do this stuff was maybe an hour or two. And I'm just going to show you one piece of the whole set of things that I created for this Indian restaurant, all using AI. In this case, what I want to see is, well, if you're doing this kind of work, it's not going to get a B. Oops. Oh, there we go.
Presenting Saffron Grove, an upscale southern Indian affair. Welcome to Saffron Grove.
So far, so good.
The most exclusive destination for an upscale dining experience that celebrates the flavors and
I liked the way it put the text in there since it was mobile, so if somebody's got their sound off, they can still read it.
Step into a world of culinary
It's taking too long between the transitions, and there wasn't an easy way to get it to not do that. What's happening with the pictures in the background is it's applying the pictures to the, oh, by the way, all of the text is all ChatGPT. I didn't write any of this. So some of it's kind of interesting. All these food stuff in the background, okay, it understands, the AI understands what it's tying to the text what you're trying to present. And Pictory would allow you to pick different images too. You could swap out images. And a few of them I did swap out, and it was easy to do that. But I want to show you, we'll get to it in a second here, some of its pictures were like this. So here's the problem with this, right? It's trying to predict, and it's not doing a very good job, right? And it was okay. I could work with it. Like, I could swap out this picture and put in a different picture. It was all right. But I was thinking, okay, the problem with this particular, using AI for this particular problem is I really would need to have my own video and my own pictures because I'm going to want to show the restaurant and the dishes that we make. I don't want to show generic stuff and things like that. So whereas in the first one, yeah, it did pretty well for that function, it's not doing well for this function at all. It is not ready to do this kind of work. Will it at one time? Maybe. I think probably so, but it's not there today. All right. I have a few final thoughts that I want to share with you. And the first is this picture. So I asked DALL-E to give me a picture of a woman using binoculars to look into the future. Right? That's what I said. Right? And it gave me a few pictures. Some of them are not great, but I liked this one. I thought, okay, yes, this is capturing some sort of concept of what I wanted to say. And it's got some really interesting elements. I love the fact that it's got her here on the side looking out into this futuristic landscape and whatnot, and you've got these flying cars and all that kind of great stuff. I even like how it understood that these things are moving, so it created motion blur with these little flying cars. But then it did something weird. She's in a pantsuit and a skirt suit. I don't know what that's all about. Is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. I don't think any women are dressing like that. Maybe they are, and I just don't know. But I thought it did a pretty good job. I can tell you this much. From now on, when I do PowerPoints, I am definitely using DALL-E because it was really easy, and a lot of the images weren't what I would want to use, but enough of them were great, and I thought, wow, this is really great. You have to kind of work around like copyright. Like it would not create, I wanted to create an image that one of the slides I had originally titled, where the frustrated guy was, it was originally titled, Help Me ChatGPT, You're My Only Hope. And I wanted a frustrated Princess Leia working at a computer, like, you know, something, it's not working, right? And it would not create a Princess Leia. It, you know, just maybe a little bit like it looked like it, but not very well. And so you kind of have to work with it some, but it's incredible. Okay, first is, I think that things like ChatGPT and other large language models like it are going to make our personal communication better. It forces you to get clear on what you're saying. Because if you're not clear on what you're saying, it's not going to give you what you're asking for, right? And it's going to be very, very, you're going to know right away that you asked the question wrong, that you didn't put enough information into what you were saying. And if you think about how something as big as what's happening with AI and what's coming with AI, in terms of how it will shift our whole society and how we work. Think about cell phones and how they have dramatically shifted how we communicate, right? That if something in our culture is causing us to be very, very clear in our communication, well, that's going to have an impact on us. And I think this is one of the benefits, is that our communication with each other is going to get better. I think that AI is going to disrupt education in significant ways, and in ways we can't even imagine at this point. I'm going to predict 30 years from now, education won't look like it does today at all. That AI is fundamentally going to change how education works. And you can start to see a little bit of this. So for the last 3 years, I've been learning Spanish on Duolingo, right? And they just introduced their AI engine for basically having, you know, a chat with it, where it's talking to you and you're talking to it and that kind of thing. And it's in its infancy, but it's coming where I'm going to be able to progress my language skills through interaction with an AI. Right? And so just that one thing, right? How is that going to impact education when you can use AI to do something like that? So I think it's going to be a big deal in education. I think it's going to be very disruptive. Here's something interesting. I don't know if you know this or not. ChatGPT sends the entire thread every time you send a new prompt. So when you start a new chat and you're talking to it, and you send the message, and then it responds, and then you respond back, and you send that, it sends the whole thread. It doesn't just send your last prompt, because it doesn't work that way. What it does is it takes the entire thread and it processes the entire thread, and then it returns the next prompt. It doesn't save your thread on the back end. That's gone. It only exists in that front end. So what that means is, if you start a chat thread with it, and you're talking about one subject, and then you think of something, and you start a new subject in that same thread, that when you're talking about the new subject and you're sending it back, you're confusing it. It's including the previous subject in how it thinks about the new subject. So that little left-hand column there of your threads, use it. Every time you change subjects, do a new thread so that you don't confuse it. And by the way, their interface is, it's super primitive at this point. And I think we're going to see over the next couple of years that kind of thing from other people get very sophisticated, because I don't think OpenAI actually cares about that much. There's an API to the back end, and there are already lots of people who are writing interfaces to that engine. I think the biggest near-term threat from AI isn't AI itself. I think it's criminal organizations using it. So I know after the break, we're going to talk about security and all that kind of stuff. I think that, I don't think we can imagine how bad that's going to get. I remember I was giving security presentations in the mid-2000s talking about the impact of criminal organizations were just beginning to get into creating viruses and stealing money and stuff like that. And within 5 years, that problem was out of hand. Within just a few years, the FBI gave up on trying to fight it. And they went to a model where they just re-image everything every night. All the PCs. They just gave up, right? Because they couldn't fight it. So I can't even imagine what criminal organizations, we saw with the cell phones. It's definitely going to be a fight. I think security for IT as part of our industry is just going to grow and be a bigger and bigger deal. I do think it will impact the entry-level jobs, but beyond that, it's going to be so critical to our whole way of life that we're going to have to fight against those kind of organizations using AI. So, just some thoughts. Questions?
Well, there were a couple questions online. So one had to do with businesses using AI in the copyright of what they produce. And I have a thought, but is there any concern of, I guess, intellectual property in general for businesses using AI to develop things?
Yeah, for one of the things is that there's already some legal precedents that AI-generated art, for instance, is not copyrightable. That sort of thing. Obviously, the writer's strike, a big piece of the writer's strike in Hollywood has been around AI, because they're afraid that what the studios are going to do is have they're going to use AI to write. What I just learned this recently, that the problem is that the way writers get paid is they get paid for the actual creation of the idea more than they get paid for writing it out. And so what they're talking about doing, that they don't want the studios to do, is use AI to create the ideas and then have the writers flesh it out, because they don't make a lot of money doing that. They make money if it's an original idea. And so I think there's going to be a lot of that kind of thing. I know my daughter is an artist, and there's a lot of buzz in the artist world around the problem of AI, because what it's doing is it's going out and it's seeing other artwork. Like that Terminator in that picture, I mean, that pretty much was the Terminator, right? I looked at it really carefully, and it's pretty darn close, right? There's no way that it didn't just copy that, right? And so I think there's going to be a lot of legal wrangling around that for the next few years, and kind of working all that out. I don't know where that's going to go, but yeah, that'll be a big deal. And businesses have to be careful about that.
Well, and let me add, would you go to a random website and type in your personal information? If you go to the ChatGPT and you type in a question, you're kind of telling it what you're thinking. And who owns that data? Microsoft. Well, I mean, they're one of the investors.
Yeah.
So the other big tech firms, I had a conversation with one of them the other day. They get a weekly email of their users that use ChatGPT. And if you do it so many times, you're fired. Because if you're asking ChatGPT to help you write a script to do X, Y, Z, then you're essentially telling perhaps a competitor that you need a script to do this, which means you're thinking about doing this. So you can give away information inadvertently. Questions? Other questions? We got time for maybe a couple. Yeah.
Two things. The conversation with my granddaughter the other day, she was excited to tell me that at school they got to have a chat with Al online. So anytime you hear a kid talk about make that transition to the same. And then I was at another meeting recently, and we were talking about ChatGPT, and this was the conclusions that we had came up with, is it can tell you pretty much anything. It is a compulsive liar. It's confident about its lying. It is a murderer. So if you look at all the things that it can and cannot do, there are ways in there to get it to do anything you want. You just have to ask it in multiple renditions of that question to get the other answer. That was what we came up with in our meeting.
I have a son who's a computer science, applied mathematics major at University of Missouri Science and Technology, and he and his buddies, it's a game to them to make ChatGPT break its own rules, and they haven't found a rule yet that they couldn't break, and do it in funny ways, like get it to role play, for instance. Like it says, I'm not allowed to do X. Okay, well, I want you to role play an AI that breaks the rule that it can't do X. Oh, okay, and then it'll break that rule. You know, and it is a liar. We saw that. All right, well, we didn't see it, but you just go try it. Go say, give me a list of books on such and such. I bet you, because I've done this 3 or 4 times now, every time it lies about one of the books. And so, yeah, it's making stuff up.
There's a popular news story out there about an attorney who turned in at LCA that so many of the references didn't exist either, and he didn't double check them.
He didn't double check his work, and he turned it into the court and got in trouble for it. Yeah.
One more question, one last question. Somebody had one up here. I thought I saw a hand up here. One last question? All right,
Wait.
in the back.
What are your thoughts on the open source AI stuff like Stable Diffusion, other LLMs that are open source? Do you have any specific?
I think like all open source, it depends on its support infrastructure, on whether it becomes popular or not. First of all, is it good? I think that AI is a category that's sort of ripe for open source, and so I think we'll see a lot of that. I do think, as far as the large language models, that we'll see some really good ones that are open source, and that opens up a whole nother can of worms, and how those get used and stuff like that. And it also depends: are they corporate sponsored, or are they just groups that are putting it out there? If it's corporate sponsored, it'll be a lot more controlled. If it's just something that some small group came up with and they just released it and people are just developing it, who knows what's going to happen with that kind of stuff. But I do think that we'll see a lot of not just. I think we'll see some core open source. I think predominantly it will be corporate owned because of the resources that you need to run it. But if somebody comes up with a decent peer-based solution, who knows? Maybe you have thousands of computers that are all providing the computing power for that.
All right, with that, thank you very much. Our first 2 presenters have been fantastic. Now it's time to get up, stretch your legs a little bit. 2 things while you go on your break. First of all, we're going to come back and we're going to hear a couple of different perspectives of cybersecurity, starting with the fallout from an actual incident that one of our communities had in our region. And then we'll switch to, I think, healthcare a little bit. But so come back for that. If you haven't visited the CFSB booth outside, make sure you do that. There is, well, first of all, the big truck outside has your cookies, so go get a cookie. But if you come inside, I think it's inside on the table, fill out your name, and there will be a drawing at the end for some
some Beats earbuds. So make sure you do that. And also, when you register or got your name tag, if you didn't get a ticket, make sure you let me know and we'll get you a ticket so that you can be in the drawing at the end for a couple of other items as well. With that, we'll be back in here in about 15 minutes. See you then. conversation, but I want us to get started back. There seems to be a line outside trying to make sure they enter all the drawings, but we'll definitely do. Come on in. Oh wait. Oh okay. Okay. Hope everybody that wanted to enter the CFSB drawing for the headphones did. If not, you're about to lose. I think she's going to come in and draw for the headphones right now. We'll let him draw.
Okay.
What if I enter?
Draw your name.
Well, if you draw your name, you draw yours. All right, this is for the Beat Studio Buds that hopefully you put your name in for.
There's a bunch of them in there.
Should draw. It looks like Austin Storms. Is Austin here? Okay, great. Congratulations.
You just can't wear those in class. All right, well, let me do a brief introduction of our next speaker. One of the things that I've done in the past is a program called DLI, Delta Leadership Institute. It's a thing where folks from across the Delta region, which is Louisiana up to southern Illinois and southeast Missouri, go to state by state to learn about the Delta. There's a lot of really interesting things that you learn. You learn things that as different as Mississippi, Kentucky may appear, there's a lot of challenges that we have that are the same. But what there's not a lot of in any of the areas that we had DLI events were IT people. And I finally met one person through this process that is also an IT person, and it happens to be our next speaker, Terrence, who is the IT director at the city of Marion, Illinois, not Kentucky. And we talked a little bit, and I wanted to find a way to get him involved, and actually thought today would be a great way to do that. Marion has had some cybersecurity challenges, and he's really led them through the thick of it out the other side. And I asked Terrence if he would just share their story, and so that's what he's going to do today. Not just theoretical, not just here's what we're doing in the classroom, but here's really how we're fighting the fires out in the real world. So Terrence Henry, IT Director for the City of Marion, I'll let you have it. Thank you very much.
All right.
Just left and right.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you guys. I don't know if you guys can all hear me. Yep. Perfect. Yeah. I'm probably one of the most unorthodox IT people that y'all have ever met. I like to be out in public. I don't like to work remotely if I don't have to. I like to get out in the world and shake hands and meet people and do those things. Those are all things that they don't think IT people will do. But in our world, it is so successful. Definitely need to be able to get out there. I did not start my path off in IT. Actually, I graduated with my nursing degree. So, yeah, I figured it was a whole lot easier to change a keyboard than a colostomy. I know for those that knows what that is, you know. So anyway, I went through the nursing program, and I kept messing with computers and so on and so forth. I am all self-taught. That usually surprises a lot of people. I'm all self-taught. So taught myself, went through a lot of different classes to learn, hung out with a lot of smart individuals, and just kept on until the point where I started to open up my own business. So I was an entrepreneur for 13 years where I opened my own computer repair business and did a lot of things, had a lot of customers. which led me on to becoming the first IT director for the city of Marion. And when I took on that challenge, I thought it was going to be great. And it still has been great. But when I started working there, they had no internet. So I was literally from the ground up, having to run Cat5 wires and a lot of different things. So again, when I'm here, I don't know what all the other presenters have done, and I know that they were great. Like Mr. Raymond said, I'm here just to talk about some of the practical things that I have gone through with the City of Marion. As the IT director, I'm responsible for 13 different departments, over 500 different computers. The computers are not my biggest concern. It's all my end users. It's my other employees that I have to deal with. On there is a lot of the different accolades and everything else, but like at the bottom it just says enough about me. So, did I skip a slide? One of the things that I find, I don't want to say challenging, but it's the Internet of Things. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Internet of Things. There may have been a speaker earlier that discussed about Internet of Things, but it is real. We are living in an age nowadays where we want things quick, fast, and in a hurry. We want to be able to access everything from our mobile devices. And so one of the things of why we love the Internet of Things is the ability to give us remote access and control. So if you're here in your classroom, you can set your thermometer and if you have a house, at your home or whatever else. I don't think they'll let you do that in the dorms yet, but maybe one day you'll be able to do such a thing. But people love to have the remote access to be able to control things remotely from their phone. The other part is the data. There's a lot of data-driven products and things that are out there. If you guys are in the IT world, data is pretty big on us. We want to know our patterns, our end users' patterns, what they like, what they don't like. From building a Wi-Fi infrastructure, you want to know where people are gathering, what they're surfing on, what they're doing, what websites they go to, those sort of things. So that way you can make it safe for them. The improvement of safety. So there's a lot of smart cities that are now being developed. So when it comes down to safety, improved safety, it comes down to our traffic signals. A lot of your traffic signals now are being controlled through the internet, as well as our water meters. You may hear a bunch about smart meters, AMI meters, and everything else. One of our goals with the City of Marion was to have a smart meter. We used to have guys literally walk around our town and read our meters one by one by one. And we had about 9,000 meters. So there was a lot of ground that they had to cover. Then technology changed and we had a drive-by system, and they thought that was the cat's meow. You can drive down the street, all the meters would come in, and again, that was supposed to save a whole lot of time, but our bills were not accurate. And what I mean by that is that if you're on fixed income, you're used to your bill being $20, $25 a month. But that only depends on whenever our people read your meters. So if they read a meter, a day late, well, your water bill would be $30. So there's a lot of different inconsistencies and everything else that we ran through with that. And every town, every state is also running through the same problem. So one of the things that we came up with was the smart meters. So the smart meters will get all the information, sends it up to the cloud. Our billing staff will download the bills all on the same day at the same time, instantly. Everybody loves it. So again, I've got traffic lights on the internet. I've got water meters on the internet. You've got electricity, gas on the internet. There's a lot of different things that compile this whole Internet of Things. So who else loves the Internet of Things? You guys want to make a guess? Yeah, you guys got to wake up. I had to drive. Yeah. So, hackers. Hackers love the Internet of Things. It's like a one-stop shop for them to be able to come in and gather all the information that we have. Again, we've got water meters, we've got our electricity, we've got our traffic signals. If you look at your house, you've got your refrigerator, you've got your baby monitors, you've got everything that you can think of in your house on Wi-Fi. And the one thing that we all complain about, not the fact that we have a weak system, but we just don't have enough bandwidth. You know, we want our refrigerator to tell us that we're running out of eggs faster than what it's telling us. You know, we want that communication from those devices that will come through. In 2015, the number of Internet of Things connected devices stood at about 15.41 billion. That was in 2015. In 2025, it's projected to be 75.44 billion. That's a lot of devices. And that's your microwaves, your can openers, your coffee makers. Who has a smart coffee maker? It's okay, you don't have to be ashamed, you know. Yeah, you know. But the coffee makers, you know, people have their coffee makers. There's an app on your phone you can download and you can set your coffee makers to go off at a certain time. Refrigerators and everything else. I saw a smart ice maker. I thought, well, who needs that? Well, if you're young and you go out and you need some ice, well, you know, people are coming back over, you can already get the ice ready, you know. So there was a lot of different devices and things that are unheard of that are now being controlled by the internet. So did you know when it comes down to the internet and the Internet of Things, these are some more stats, and I don't want to really bore a whole lot on stats, but I think it was kind of important to know because one, we know that by 2025, 75.44 billion devices will be part of the Internet of Things. Cars, coffee pots, everything that we have. So, what's all the hackers know? The other thing is that globally, in 2023, there were 112 million attacks on these Internet of Things devices. Now, who would ever thought about trying to hack a toaster? We're so busy trying to control and protect our laptops, our desktops. You know, you might even want to download something on your phone to protect it. You know, or if you're an Apple person, you're probably thinking that, oh, I don't have to worry about none of this. I'm Apple. Apple doesn't catch a virus. Yeah, good luck with that one. The other thing is, the malware increased 77% in the first half of 2022. So these stats are just a year old. And the Internet of Things seems to be a new concept. We're like, you know, we're hearing this new concept, this Internet of Thing, Internet of Thing, Internet of Thing. But actually, I believe it was in 1988, the first Internet of Thing device was created, which was a soda machine, if I'm not mistaken. It was a way of letting them know when it was running empty. Now this new term that's coming out is AIoT. Have you guys all heard of that? So AI, artificial intelligence of things. So you're comparing the AI with the Internet of Things. Another thing is, when it comes down to the smart home trends, baby monitors. I think it was in California, an unknown hacker apparently gained access to a 2-year-old girl's baby monitor, calling her by name and harassing her parents, herself, insanities, profanities, all those sort of things. Hacked a baby monitor. Again, in the IT world, we're focused on laptops, desktops, those sort of things. How many people in this room took a class on how to protect a baby monitor? Exactly. The Peloton bikes. They just released not too long ago that the Peloton bikes have a malware that's being installed on those as well. And again, you ask yourself, who really wants to hack an exercise bike? Then we switch over there in 2016, the Android TV devices. They were also hacked. So you have your smart televisions, you've got your exercise bike, you got your baby monitors. Again, no one has shown us how to protect these devices, per se, right? The one thing that they all have in common is that they're connected on the internet. Without the internet, they won't work. And like I said at the top, if you connect it, protect it. Ways hackers get in. And these are some of the things that I try to go through and think about, right? One of the ways that hackers get in is weak routers. I see so many times that people will go to Walmart or whatever store of their choice, Best Buy, whatever store, and they'll buy a router. And the first thing they do with the router, of course, they open it up, they set, they go through and they plug it in. Have you guys all set up a router before? Okay. And I'm just asking these questions to make sure y'all still with me. Yeah. So whenever you set up a router at home, has anyone set a router up at home? So whenever you set the router up at home, can you explain to me, like, since you've been engaging with me, can you explain a little bit of the process that you take when you get your router?
I was going to say, it has been updated since I've last did it.
Yeah, and it's no problem, and I didn't mean to. I don't want to put you on the spot. So here's what a lot of people will do. They'll get their router, they'll plug it onto the network. They'll go through the wizard, how to set up their router and do all that. But most often, they keep everything factory default, factory settings. If anything else, they'll change the Wi-Fi because they want the Wi-Fi part to look cool. They want it to say their name or say something different or put words like FBI so that one, don't think anyone can go through and hack it or do some sort of things of that nature. But most people keep it in their factory settings. I went to one lady's house and she had an issue with her router. She did not know what her password was. So the first thing I did was I typed in the word admin and password. Got right in. So that's a weak security part. Most hackers know that part. Most hackers know too that most people don't even change their IP addresses that come along with their devices. They just keep it how it is. So it may be a 1.1. You guys familiar with IP addresses? So do you guys all use 1.1s here? 192.168.1.1. 0.1 are the 255s. Okay? And you don't have to admit it. It's okay. Firmware updates. When it comes down to firmware updates, mostly everything has a firmware update. Your smart televisions, so your LG devices, whatever devices that you may have, make sure that you go through and make sure that those firmwares are up to date. They do that on purpose because they know that there's a vulnerability that's there and they're trying to close those loopholes. That's something else that we don't think about. We'll buy a router. We don't do firmware upgrades. Why? It's still working. We don't fix something until it's broke. We buy a TV. Well, it's still working. I can still watch my Broncos. I'm a Broncos fan. I can still watch my Broncos, and I don't have to worry about it. Yeah, don't laugh at me because I'm a Broncos fan. I know we got problems. Yeah. But firmware updates is something else that you need to be aware of and go through and make sure that you do make those patches. Weak passwords. Again, on the router, some people just keep it default. Admin, and password. Or if you look on the back of the router, it'll have the password on the back of the router. Honestly, sometimes on those Linksys routers, you can even Google the username and password, and it will tell you exactly what it is. And most of us would do that on our own routers, and it's really located on the bottom of it. But again, that's another way people are getting in. Another part is auto connect. You guys familiar with the word auto connect? So auto connected is like whenever you have Wi-Fi on your phone and you allow your devices to get automatically connected to any free Wi-Fi spot that's out there. So if you're driving down the road and you've got your cell phone on and you wonder why your battery is going down so fast, it's because your cell phone is searching for all these different Wi-Fi signals as you're driving down the road, which is draining your battery. And if it finds a free one, it attaches to it. Finds a free one, it attaches to it. So in your home or whatever else that you're at, if there's a free Wi-Fi that's being enabled on your home devices, or auto connect is enabled on your own personal devices, you should turn that off. Those are some of the ways. I could have went more and more into that. Being in the IT field, definitely dealing with some of our own end users. But another way hackers do get in is our end users. Now, one of the things that I was talking to Michael about when it came down to when we were talking in the DRA area, he wanted to have me share like my own experience and what I had going on. Now, you guys all heard of ransomware, right? Yeah, ransomware is real. That is a real threat, and that's a very dangerous threat. And sometimes it can be hard to combat that. So with my own personal experience, I'm the IT director. You saw some slides before. I've gotten a lot of awards and accolades and a lot of different things, and I thought I'm pretty, slick with my IT skills. Know how to do a lot of different things. Plus, I got other staff members that work with me as well on my IT staff. So, we stay on top of everything. One of the devices that I use, I'm all Cisco. I'm sure you guys are aware of Cisco. So I'm a Cisco Meraki fan. Does that ring any bells in here too? Okay, yeah, I'm all Cisco Meraki. So I also partnered up with the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois gave us a program called CrowdStrike. You guys familiar with that term as well? Perfect. And so I've got my Cisco Meraki, I got my CrowdStrike, I've got other firewalls. I got a lot of things in place and felt pretty confident on my network. So one day I get a call from Homeland Security, which is scary. So they called me and they said, "Hey Terrence, we noticed on your network that you've got a computer over there that's sending out a beacon. Are you guys aware of the word beacon?" For those that are not, and it's okay if you guys shake your head, nose, and all that good stuff. That's what we're here for. We're here to learn. And I'm here to teach you my story, so that way if you guys run across it, you guys don't freak out like I did. But one of the things that a beacon does is someone will gain access to your computer and starts to send out a beacon saying, "Hey, I'm open. I'm open." It's kind of like playing football. I'm open. Throw me the ball. I'm open. Throw me the ball. So when the Homeland Security called me and said, "One of my computers is sending out a beacon." And I said, "Okay, which one is it?" So we went through and we identified which one it was. Of course, I did like probably the rest of you guys did. You scan it, you use your Malwarebytes, and you do all the stuff, and it's like, okay, I think we're pretty good. I got it all taken care of. And then I get another call a couple days later. And they said, "Terrence, you're sending out beacons again." I said, "That's impossible." I went through and I cleaned it. And he said, "No, it is. It's still sending out beacons." I said, "All right, no problem." So this time I went through and I totally erased the computer. Wipe and reload. You nuke it, is what I thought. Just nuke it. Well, let's wipe and reload it. Then I don't have to worry about it. Whatever's on it, it's gone. A couple days later, I get the call again. They said, "Terrence, you're still sending out beacons." And I said, "That's impossible." And I said, "What, where?" They told me. I said, "I wiped that thing and reloaded it." And they said, "Well, I don't know what it is, but it's still there." And they said, "It goes off around 4:30. I said, "That's even more impossible because there's nobody there at 4:30. There's no one on the computer at 4:30. But all day long, it doesn't send out a beacon. 4:30 starts sending out beacons." So I was complexed on it. Didn't really understand what was going on. So I hit it with another nuke. This nuke was replace it. Get rid of the computer. So I got our brand new computer. Scrapped the other one, recycled it, got rid of it completely because, whatever was on it, I couldn't get it off. 2 days later, I got a call, and they said, Terrence, you're still sending out beacons. I said, man, I got rid of the computer. Like, how am I still sending out beacons? They said, now it's on another one. Like, you have got to be kidding me. And he told me which computer it was on. So I went to that computer. I got rid of it. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to fool with it. I'm just going to get rid of the computer altogether. So I did. Got rid of that computer. So that's 2 computers I got rid of. Completely took them off my network. And I'm like, okay, we should be good to go now. Nope. A couple days later, I got a call again, and I'm still sending out beacons. The way these beacon systems work, and what the Homeland Security people explained to me, is that they will find a vulnerability within your network. And then once they get in your network, they start sending out beacons and telling other people, like, hey, I've got a hole in your network. If you're interested in getting on this network, we'll sell it to you. So they sell it to like the highest bidder. So I knew that it was just a matter of time before my network got sold to someone else. And then that's when the ransomware comes in, and that's a game changer. So got rid of that computer. Before you know it, I think I replaced about 5 or 6 different computers. So figured there is no way that this virus can still be on our network. And probably about a week went by, and I was like, yeah, we got it. We did it, We got rid of the virus. I don't have to worry about it no more. There's no more beacons. So the guy from Homeland Security gives me a call, and I said, yeah, got it, didn't I? He said, no, you're still sending out a beacon. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I've replaced everything that I can think of. I'm like, where is it at now? So he gave me an IP address of where it was sending out a beacon at. And I was confused. And so I said, are you serious? That's where it's coming from. Can you guys guess where the virus ended up going? See, the virus was smart. It knew that I was on it. The hackers knew that I was on it. So whenever I started working on that first computer, they knew the end user left and there was no activity after 4 o'clock. That's why they started at 4 o'clock. Once I removed that computer off the network and did everything I needed to do, they knew I was onto it, so it jumped to another computer. And then when I got rid of that computer, they jumped to another computer. Because I had a segregated network, the ring that they were in, that's all they can do. They couldn't really spread to all these other different computers that I had, within the network, which was great, engineering on our aspect. But it was still a scary part. So after replacing all those computers and doing all my patches and firmware updates and everything else, can you guys even guess where the virus went to? Huh? The what?
Someone's phone?
I heard of someone's phone. Any other ones? You said my computer? Oh no, that would be so embarrassing. Any other guesses? No, and so far we don't have one of those. But he said coffee maker. Any other guesses? It's something that you guys use all the time. TV? No, it wasn't a TV. Printer. Yeah, it went to the printer. Who would have thought a printer? We go back to the previous slides again. How do you scan a printer for a virus? A printer. But it was a smart printer, like all smart printers. They're smart printers. They are on the network. So the virus went to the printer and it sat in there. That was his home because he was still on the network. And he could still get out and go wherever he needed to go to, but he realized that I was replacing computer by computer by computer, but he was still in the printer and was sending out beacons saying, I'm in the network, I'm in the network. A printer. So we got rid of the printer, and it all stopped. And that nasty virus is called TrickBot. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it before, but it was a nasty virus, and we avoided ransomware by the hair of our chinny chin chins, because if that beacon was successful and someone else was to accept that offer that was out there, then yeah, we would have probably been hit by by ransomware, and it could have been very catastrophic. And the downside to that is we don't know when that device, any of our devices, were infected with this TrickBot virus. It could have happened a week prior. It could have happened 6 months prior. Sometimes they just go in there and they sit dormant. Now, in our RT world, in our RT field, we're like, well, this is great because we got backups. Everyone pushes the importance of backups, which I also do as well. Backups are highly important. But if you caught a virus 6 months ago and you backed up that computer, well, you backed up that virus. And every time you're backing up something, you're still backing up that virus. My recommendations on the whole backup is that as soon as you get that device out of the box and you set it up, back it up then, and have a hard copy backup sitting someplace else with all your configurations and keep it off the network. And then continue your backups from there. So you'd always have that fail-safe point when it comes to that. But again, when it comes down to the TrickBot and everything else, that was definitely a very, very nasty situation that went through. So a couple things what you can do. I like the boxing thing, so it's always about protect yourself at all times. So when it comes down to that, you definitely want to secure your router. Things we kind of talked about earlier. Don't use the factory defaults in a router. And don't whatever on the back of a router, it usually has a username and a password. Wi-Fi code. Everyone knows that. You may have somebody come over and take a picture of the back of your router and leave. You just don't know, and then they have access to your network. The other thing is change the IP addresses. Don't use the default ones that are there. You have the option to make up your own IP address, your LAN address. Not your public, but your LAN. And you guys understand the difference between a public IP and the LAN IP? Perfect. So inside your homes, your friends' homes, or if you're with whatever router that you guys use, change those IP addresses. Don't make it easy for the hackers because they're going to go for the defaults first. Sometimes the routers will broadcast their manufacturer's name. So it may say, Linksys router, Nighthawk, and then they'll just Google it. What's the IP address of that? And then they'll go in. So changing those would be great because the first thing they'll do is use the default settings. Again, always check for firmware updates. So whatever smart devices that you may have, televisions, cell phones, coffee makers, printers, and you got to add printers to the list now. All those sort of things. Make sure you upgrade the firmwares on there. Now, I will say from my own personal experience, especially with Apple, whenever they come out with an update, I never jump on it first. I usually wait a week because it seemed like they got another update to come out to fix the last update they just had. So firmwares are about the same way. When you have a firmware upgrade, I wait just about a week or so, make sure there's not a second firmware to come through. I read on it to find out what all it's going to break so I can expect it. And then I go through and I update it. Complex passwords is also a must. Two-factor authentication is becoming more and more prevalent. In our government world, we have to use two-factor authentications on a lot of our devices. If not, our insurance rates goes up. And then if our stuff goes up, everybody else's goes up. You guys all know how the government works. So, two-factor authentication, you guys are familiar with that. I'm sure with your Gmails and everything else, everyone has gone to that where they'll get a text message, and so they're important. But one lady told me for her password, it was her dog's name. And I said, oh, you know, so you let your dog outside the house and you just scream your dog's name, Daisy, all outdoors. And everybody knows that that's your password too. You know? Education. Education is also very, very valuable. Not just for yourselves, but for your peers and everyone else around you. You know, to get up like I'm getting up today and telling my story. Some businesses, some IT professionals will find that embarrassing, but I don't. You know, I'm glad that we avoided a mishap. I was proud of my team and everything else that we were able to do that, and all the assistance that we had, and to be able to take our experiences and pass that on to you guys as well. Another thing is monitor your network. You guys heard of the app Who's on My Wi-Fi? Okay. So there's an app called, I think it's Who's on My Wi-Fi. You can Google it, and you can download that app. So whenever you're in your house, whatever else, you can just pull that up and just click on there, Who's on My Wi-Fi, and you'll see if there's any strange devices that are on your Wi-Fi. You guys all have Netflix accounts? So you could do the same for Netflix. You know, a lot of people with Netflix, I would recommend you guys doing that as well. Because one of the things we do with Netflix, we don't have to download it anymore. It comes with our televisions. Our smart TVs have Netflix associated with them. And that's on the internet. And so people are also hacking into the TV, hacking into the apps, and now they're able to watch Netflix right alongside you. So you can log into your Netflix account and see who's all logged in. And it may surprise you. You know, you do have the option to kick them off. But again, that's one of those things of going through and updating the firmware and changing passwords and making sure that they are no longer able to go through and to do that. You know, but I wanted to kind of keep it like short, simple, brief, you know, kind of cut to the chase with a lot of things. I wish I could tell you that when it comes down to the IT world that, you know, you guys won't experience any of the challenges or any different things that, you know, we've gone through. I think as the years go by, cybersecurity is going to become a more and more important task. Whenever I started out, back in, you know, way back, you know, my daughter says I'm old because I was born in the 1900s. You know? But when we started out, we didn't have all the different things. You know, a computer person was basically a guy that can take a computer, take a hard drive out, put a hard drive in. You can go through and take a power supply out, put one in. If there's a virus, we take a virus off. But we never thought, way back in the 99, 2000 era, which is not that long ago, honestly, that we would have to be concerned more about network security than actual hard drives even going out. The odds of a hard drive going out compared to your computer getting hacked is astronomical. You know, you're more likely to get hacked before your hard drive goes out, unless you just do something silly to make it go out. You know, but cybersecurity in my field is something that I see more and more important as it goes by. So I think that's about my time. So
We've got time for a question or two if you have it.
Yes.
How does Homeland Security know that you had a meeting? Do they notice the option as well, on their own end, or how do they?
Well, that's a very good question. So I contacted Homeland Security. So I contacted Homeland Security. I also contacted the state of Illinois, and I actually gave them access to my network. We have just me and two other staff members. And like I said before, we cover a lot of different computers. I'm not opposed of asking for help. And everyone always says that they're afraid of Big Brother, but I invite Big Brother. You know, I want Big Brother, I want the Homeland Security, I want the state of Illinois to also help monitor my network. You know, be my eyes, be my ears, and those sort of things. And that's a service that they provide free of charge. So we don't have to pay for that. And it's the CASA CISA. And that's federal. So you guys are probably have access to that as well. Any other questions?
Was there a way that you could have gotten rid of it besides replacing all that equipment that you own?
Honestly, I really didn't know, but time was of the essence. And so I didn't want to try to go through and outsmart it or try to do anything else, because time was truly of the essence with me. And it was a lot cheaper to replace, you know, $800 computer that wasn't really Windows 11 compatible anyway, you know, so it really already had to go. But it was a lot cheaper to do that than spend $3 million to unlock a whole city. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
Do you know what the operating system was on the printer?
No, I do not know the operating system that was on the printer. Yeah, I barely don't think does a printer have an operating system?
Yeah, but, if it's, I'm just wondering if it was maybe on Linux.
That I honestly, I don't know, because I really, printers are one of those things that we really don't pay a whole lot of attention to. You know,
They're just supposed to work.
they're just supposed to work. We hit print and they work, and they put them on the internet and they work. So I never really, but that's a good question. Now I will research that to see, you know, what kind of operating system they had on it. You know, most of the time I just see version this, version that. You know, but I just knew that it was there. Most printers have hard drives, so it was embedded within the hard drive going through the network.
I'm going to stop it there. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
I think that's a really interesting story and some good lessons to take away. So thank you.
No problem.
Can't have you walk for the next one. Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, let me share. We have one more speaker who's do this, and then we'll share a couple things while we're getting ready. Every year when we have IT Matters, for the 8 years that we've done this, we've co-hosted this with CFSB, and it's one of those things that we wouldn't be doing this without CFSB. But we also wouldn't be doing this without our sponsors and our partners in this. And you know, for the years that we've had IT Matters, AT&T has been our sponsor. They have been our primary sponsor for, well, the first 7 years of IT Matters. And the funding that the donation, the sponsorship that AT&T has provided over the years goes directly to scholarships. So I know there's a couple of community colleges that are in the room. The money that we receive from AT&T is for transfer scholarships. It is not for anything else but for transfer scholarships for students that are transferring from, it doesn't have to be KCTCS only, it can be from Illinois, it can be from Tennessee, but from a community college to Murray State. That is how you're eligible for those scholarships. And I say this every year, and Robin and Carmen both will hear me yell at their students about this, that I have extra money in that scholarship fund every year because students aren't applying, transfer students aren't applying for those scholarships. We get transfer students, but they don't apply. So first of all, thanks to AT&T for that support. Second of all, this year, we did something a little different. System Solutions reached out to us and said, hey, we want to do a tabletop exercise in Paducah and or Murray didn't have really a lot of the details about what we wanted to do, but just said, hey, would you be interested in talking to us and seeing what we can do? And so today, System Solutions hosted a tabletop. Randall helped out, but it was System Solutions. Randall was just labor. And Carlos was just labor too. Don't want to forget Carlos. But we're supposed to pick on Randall. We're not supposed to pick on Carlos. But anyway, the point is, it was a great opportunity. The ones that participated in the tabletop that I talked to enjoyed it, learned a lot. It made them think about things a little bit different. And so thank you all for that and coming on board to be a sponsor this year. It is partnerships that make an event like this successful. They thought, System Solutions thought they can just do the tabletop and they were done. No, not so fast. We also need to finish the conference with a bang. So we asked, who is your best speaker that can come and share? That person wasn't available. So no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But no, we're talking about, first of all, this is October, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I know it's IT Matters, but we have to talk about security and the issues because that is part of what we're supposed to talk about in October, and that's important. But we were talking about the things that we need to do, and System Solutions is a managed service provider that does cybersecurity as well and sees these issues on a day in and day out basis. So I thought it'd be interesting to wrap up our day by hearing from the experts in what they're doing and what they're seeing and the things that we can do to stay safe. So Josh Smith, who is, and I had to print it out, make sure I got it right, Directors of Operations at System Solutions, is going to share a few things. And the title is perfect. It's cybersecurity measures to implement yesterday, meaning we're already late, that costs nothing. There's a lot that we can do that is free, and he's going to talk about some of that. So Josh, thank you very much for sharing.
Thanks. I feel like the pressure is really on after that introduction, so thanks for that. So I do want to thank Murray for hosting us and allowing us to be part of it, and Dr. Joyce for running a room in our tabletop and allowing us to do that tabletop. It was great. I think John pulled the audience earlier when he spoke and asked IT versus students. Is there anybody here who's not IT but is in the business world, so business leaders, business managers, anything like that? No. Okay. So the presentation may be a little different then, right? So for IT people, these are things that we all deal with all the time. We all encounter them. They're fights that we have to fight. And similar to Terrence's presentation that we just heard, a lot of this is going to focus on the human side of IT, right? Not the technology side. So for the students here, these are, I'm going to say fights, but it's not that negative. These are fights and conversations and discussions and debates that you're going to have in your future jobs and your future careers with business leaders in your organizations to find the right balance of things to implement. So I'll get to a brief introduction here in just a second, but our perspective, like Dr. Ramage said, is that we're a managed services provider. So I've had the opportunity, I've been in the industry for about 16 years. I've worked with thousands of end users, hundreds of clients, and we see problems are not unique across organizations, right? Different industries have different types of problems, different sets of problems, but all in all, the guidelines are very similar across organizations and across industries, and the battle that you fight between organizations is largely the same. So these are just some of the things that we've picked up on, some of the discussions we have with clients and potential clients, and in situations like this where maybe we're doing some consulting to get a feel for, so everybody can just kind of get a feel for what this world's been like lately. So my background is technical. I graduated in 2006 with an undergrad degree in IT. I knew when I graduated that my goal was to be less technical every year I progressed through my career. I wanted to move more towards the management or the business side. That's not the path for everybody, but that's what I wanted to do. I'm lucky that that's kind of been the route I've been able to go down. So that kind of came full circle. In 2021, I enrolled in the MBA program here at Murray. and just graduated this past June. And even though my degree is College of Business, I did have the chance to take a couple IT electives from Dr. Combs, so that was good. I still got to stay kind of close to my roots. Prior to joining System Solutions, I worked for a major retailer at a corporate office. I was a Linux admin and a help desk admin. And then System Solutions in 2011, I've been everything from a field engineer, a workstation tech, up to a system admin, and then a team lead. And now as director of operations, I'm kind of split between the consulting side of our business and also just internal business operations in general. So System Solutions, just real quick, again, managed services provider. Our clients are across the country at this point, heavily focused in Western Kentucky and Southern Illinois. But with remote support and remote work being what it is, we'll support any industry, anytime. We provide typical managed services, so remote help desk, on-site support, cybersecurity solutions, consulting, infrastructure design, kind of just the gambit of general IT infrastructure managed services. Where we may be a little unique is we focus on regulated industries. So most of our business, probably 70% or so, is regulated industries, mostly healthcare. So a lot of healthcare, a lot of banking, those kind of things. So those industries comes with their own unique set of guidelines, and we'll kind of guide some of this conversation. So why we're here, this isn't philosophy, so we're not going to get too deep on that, but we've got some scary statistics, right? Because no cybersecurity presentation is complete without scary statistics. There's a couple that I want to key in on, and I don't have my notes, so I'm gonna flip to the notes here. So 82% of data breaches involve a human element, right? So that might be a phishing attempt, that might be lost credentials, that might be some form of compromised account due to human error. So that goes to a lot of what Terrence said in his previous presentation, where the user is going to be a lot of the focus in this. And because of that, because it's all on the user, there's no such thing as guaranteed protection or 100% protection. So 46% of attacks are aimed at small businesses. So small businesses in this context are organizations with less than 1,000 employees. So that covers most of what we work with in our organization at System Solutions. I'd be willing to bet the businesses that are here, it covers most of them as well. So we're going to talk about it later, but the days of I'm too small to be a target and nobody's interested in the data that I have, like those days are gone. That doesn't exist anymore, if it was ever true. 25% of cyber crimes are reported globally. So that means 75% of all cyber crimes that occur do not get reported. That's pretty scary. The numbers of what we know about are already staggering. So the fact that the overwhelming majority of them are not reported gives you a good sense of just how big of an issue this is today. And then I'm not going to read them, but there's a few statistics up here that talk about increased spending in IT and in cybersecurity specifically. And it's something to the effect of like a 15% year-over-year increase in the last 4 years in cybersecurity spending. So my question to the organizations in the room would be, what does your cybersecurity budget look like today compared to what it looked like 4 years ago? Have you been keeping up with the industry and with the trends? And if not, why not? And if you haven't been, have your competitors been? So something to keep in mind if you need ammo to take back to a decision maker. So we're on to the first of what I'd call the first of the free things that that people need to keep in mind. And this one's more of a mindset than anything else. This is that everybody makes this equation, especially when people aren't in IT, but we find it best to say that cybersecurity does not equal technology. They're not the same thing. They're not one and the same. Cybersecurity for us is three individual pillars, and it's people, process, and technology. So a well-rounded, complete cybersecurity platform or strategy has to include all three pillars. And again, technology is the piece that most of us in here are interested in, and it's the exciting piece, and it's the it's the thing we're excited about and to read what's coming next. But the people and the process are just as important. So we like to, when we meet with clients and potential clients, we like to make sure that they're thinking about cybersecurity in terms of risk and risk management rather than purely through IT. Yes, IT is regularly in charge of the being, the security officer, the privacy officer for their organization, but a real cybersecurity plan has to have input from all departments and include everybody in that discussion. So we said people, process, and technology. So the people are the people in your organization, they're your users, they're also your IT staff, they're your cybersecurity staff. The process is how you use and how your users use the tools and the systems that you have in place. And the technology is, again, the part that most of us are here for. It's the software and the hardware and the systems that we utilize to protect ourselves and then also to recover. So one of the things that we ask people to do usually is to set separate budgets for IT versus cybersecurity. IT is expensive in general, cybersecurity is more expensive to do right. So keep them separate, make sure that maybe those budgets are spread out between departments. So the second thing, and this is something that we can all do, it costs nothing. There are platforms you can use and subscribe to and those kind of things, but typically you could do it for free as well. Train your users. So the users need to know what's out there, what threats are out there, how to find them, how to spot them, when to be suspicious. So the user is always going to be the weakest link. It's always going to be the most vulnerable piece in the cybersecurity chain. So where we can sometimes be at odds with users or with our organization on this as IT professionals is to blame the user. It's not the user's fault. It's our fault for not educating the user as best as we can. So it's our jobs, or our security officer's job, or IT's job, to stay on top of the threats, pass that information along to the rest of the users, make sure that they're responsible for it. The goal is not to chastise or to punish or to reprimand. The goal is to identify users that need additional training, that need help. When users understand the why that we're concerned about cybersecurity and the what are the potential consequences, we find that they're much more receptive to it. So, and again, the stat from earlier, 82% of breaches involve the human element. So we try to get to a point with training where users understand that we like them to have a healthy skepticism of everything they do, of the data they access, of where they get their information, of who they're communicating with, of the emails they receive and the links that they click on and everything. So you've got to train, you've got to retrain, you've got to test your users. So we like to do phishing simulations where we'll use the platforms that I talked about earlier to send out fake phishing attempts. The platforms will log and track who clicks on links in the emails, who maybe clicks on a link that takes them to a fake login page that then collects credentials. So one of the attack methods that we've seen in these phishing campaigns is, and this probably works okay on the big screen. So on the right side of the screen there, my email address is at the top. So the other three are slightly modified. My favorite, it's maybe not the best one, but my favorite is the bottom. And there's some similarities. And what we've seen in the past in some attacks that we've worked is where an attacker will go out and do some social engineering and do some research on a business and get their domain. They'll use their domain, they'll go to their website, they'll go to the About Us page, they'll find their executives, they'll find their management team, because all of us businesses have our executives listed on our website, right, with a little bio, probably giving too much information. And then they'll go out and they'll register a domain that is very similar. So two V's next to each other look like a W. A T and an L transposed in an email address are very difficult to spot, especially if you're not IT, you're immersed in your job, and you're just trying to get through this email to get on to the next one. So we've seen this where we've had calls from clients who have been convinced that their email has been compromised and they need, we need to figure out why and how, and then we, copy and paste the domain into a domain whois check and see that it's a new domain that was registered 3 days ago. So it's a pretty common tactic that we see. Somebody earlier in one of the tabletops mentioned that they had an attack or a phishing attempt on their business where their email address was a .com, and the attacker was able to go out and register the .co of the same, and the first email fooled the person that it went to, and luckily nothing came of it. But I thought that was a good example. So the third item is to get your policies and procedures in order. So this is something that there's no excuse not to do, but we as IT people hate it. Documentation is awesome, it's valuable, we have to do it, but we hear a lot from our techs, we have to kind of beat it into them that, I'm too busy to document that, or I'm too busy to create that SOP. But the truth is, if you don't have your policies and procedures in order along with your documentation, there's no way to transfer that information effectively and efficiently to your users or to the IT person that comes after you or the rest of your IT staff that you may need to be training. So the idea, like we talked about earlier, is to use the processes and procedures and the training that we've been talking about, and again, create that culture of cybersecurity. It's got to start at the top of the organization. It's got to be top down. Your executive team, your management, your IT leaders have to show a commitment to cybersecurity to make sure that all of your staff knows that it's in the forefront of the mind, it's important to the organization. The policies and procedures have to be a living document. The regulated industries we work at or work with, they're required to have them. They have to be reviewed every year. They have to be updated. They have to be tested. They go through audits, those kind of things. But it has to be a living document because IT control, cybersecurity changes constantly, and you have to constantly be updating those documents to make sure that the guidelines and the procedures you have in place are correct. So again, obviously, if you're in a regulated industry like banking or healthcare or something along those lines, or if you're a government contractor, you may fall under NIST or CMMC. Use those as the guideline. If you don't work in an industry, or if you're just if you're a student just curious about what these kind of controls look like, a couple generic ones that you can go out and look at, CIS version 8 or NIST 800-171 are good places to start. They will have those types of requirements don't tell you exactly what to do. They kind of give you the broad strokes, and it's up to you to customize them and kind of make them your own. So the statistic that I think this was on an earlier slide too, but the statistic that was kind of scary to me, and we heard I think I heard backing for this statistic in the tabletop exercise earlier, was that 60% of organizations don't have a formal incident response plan. I think there was maybe one company in our tabletop that had it. He didn't have a printed copy, he only had an electronic copy. But that's the document that tells you, your staff, your users, what to do, how to react, what you're going to do in the event of some kind of attack or a security incident. So if you don't know where to start, don't have formal policies and procedures in place, the 5 on the right are kind of my favorite, where I tell people to start. Information security policy, incident response, disaster recovery, acceptable use, and access control. So those are the ones that, at bare minimum, you should have. And then the other, along the bottom, are a few more that I felt were worth mentioning. One that we talked about a lot this morning in the tabletop, and I want to point out here, is vendor management. So for those of us in IT, we work with software vendors and managed services providers and other companies that at some point in time we may give access to our network. Maybe they'll have an account on our network or on your organization's network. It's good to ask questions of that organization, of their security policies. So you want to partner and use partners who are also focused on cybersecurity. And then back to the incident response plan that outlines how you're going to respond and what your users are going to do. We talked a little bit, or somebody else touched earlier on reporting for cybersecurity incidents, whether it be to law enforcement or to CISA or a government agency. Right now, depending on your industry may have some specific reporting requirements. So those aside, there's not really a law that requires you to report. In 2022, there was a law passed. It's the Cyber Incident Reporting, I forget the rest of the acronym, but it was signed in 2022. And the final rule's not out yet. It's expected to be out in the next year. And it actually outlines the federal government has a list of industries that they consider to be critical infrastructure. It's things like energy, the energy sector, healthcare sector, those kind of things. And what this law says, and again, CISA's working on the final rule where the guidelines are going to be finalized and come out this year, next year. It says that you have to report, and then furthermore, you have to disclose if and how much of a ransom that you paid in the event of a ransomware event. So while it's not mandatory right now, those kind of changes are coming. So this one should be easy for those of us in the room. I'm sure there are none here, but there are lazy IT people that will do it. So the principle of least privilege says you give a user the minimum amount of access to do their job and no more. So the principle of least privilege is going to govern the where, the when, and the how that users are able to access data. The where can be the from where, from their office versus from home. The when is time of day. The how is, can they access it on mobile? Do they have the ability to download? Do they have the ability to print? But where this is a little bit different is this should apply to us in IT as well. And this is one of the places we see people, especially internal IT staff or other MSPs, slip up a little bit, is that just because your job requires you to have domain administrator or local administrator rights for some of the tasks, it certainly doesn't require it for all of them. So the account that you daily drive, right? So my email address is jsmith. So my jsmith account should never ever be a domain admin account, right? I'm out there, I'm public, I'm just as likely to be compromised as anybody else. So if I have administrative level tasks I need to do, I log out as jsmith and I log in with a dedicated admin account. So the easy way out, right, would be to give a user domain admin if they have a certain issue that we just can't resolve, that kind of thing. Maybe local admin, something like that. So keep the level of access at the minimum possible to minimize the attack surface, minimize the lateral movement. Because if you think about it in terms of ransomware, if a user is compromised and that's the account used to execute the encryption, they're going to execute every file share, every workstation, every device they've got access to. So we want to minimize what that is that they have access to. So harden your current configurations. This one is, we come into a lot of potential clients that have licensing and tools and everything else that is not fully configured, is not fully utilized. So this is about getting the most out of your current investment. So IT, and this is where the IT staff struggles with the sales staff, or the IT staff struggles with the rest of the business, is that IT is a balance between security and convenience. And a lot of times convenience wins out. And that's out of our control, and all we can do is provide the information and keep providing the information until they either fire us because they're tired of hearing it, or until they get it. We talked about the admin accounts a minute ago, but all of the systems that come with built-in tools are far better than nothing. So Windows Firewall, yeah, it's not enough, but it's way better than nothing. 365 has MFA built in. You have to be using it at this point. Microsoft 365 has the ability to do Secure Score, which will tell you where your 365 tenant is weak and where you need to make changes. Windows patch management isn't the greatest, but it's better than nothing. I'd rather an organization have their machines all set to auto patch than have nothing. So password policies are a big one. So password policies, they're easy. Most of the world is Windows. Most of the world in the US is on domains. So built into Active Directory is the ability to require complex passwords. What we frequently run into when we come into a client's environment or a potential client's environment or a new client's environment, the first thing we do is a security audit. We go through their Active Directory, we go through the group policies, we go through their firewall, we determine, and we make a list of things that we want to see change, we need to see change if we're going to continue to move forward. Password policies is always one that we have issues with because people have had the same password for the last 6 years and they don't want to change it. The other thing we see that is really frustrating is a lot of time we find a set group of users that are excluded from some of these policies, from things like password policies and MFA, things like that. And that group of excluded users is very frequently the executive team. It's the business leaders, the business managers that don't want to be inconvenienced by these extra security measures. And the truth is, again, we talked about earlier, your executive team's probably on your website. There's probably a bio of them. They're a public figure. They're out speaking events, or they're public. And then they're also high value because they have access to everything, right? So this is kind of the intersection of principle of least privilege and making sure your policies are in order. So the last thing, not meant to be cryptic, it was just so I would remember it. So still to this day, I've been in IT for 16 years, still to this day, I'm fighting with organizations that we find have remote desktop open to the outside world with no other VPN required or encryption or anything like that. The number, I like that I'm getting some laughs on this side of the room, so that's good. The number, so 1,178,671. So if anybody is familiar, there's a website called Shodan, shodan.io. Anybody? Head nods? Yep, okay. So Shodan is kind of cool. It's a search engine that is a search engine of internet-connected devices. So you can search for device types, you can search for ports that are open across different criteria. So you can do a port scan of a specific external IP address. It'll come back and tell you all the ports open on that IP address. Public information, it's free, you can go play with it. So RDP is again, kind of a pet peeve, because we still find it, we still see it used in major businesses, and it's one of the most low-hanging fruits that an attacker could possibly find. So I scanned the US, the entire US, for OpenRDP ports, and it came back with just over 1.1 million. That's way lower than I expected it to be, right? That's great. So I wish I had taken the time to do like a time lapse and find out what this was several years ago, because this is not bad. But what Shodan lets you do is it lets you break down further the geography. So I decided to look at just Kentucky. So in Kentucky, and Shodan's also pretty cool. Shodan did this heat map for me. So what it plotted was the geolocation by WAN IP address of every open RDP port in the state of Kentucky. Now, some of these are probably homes. They still shouldn't be. You still shouldn't have RDP open to your home, but definitely not your business. But a lot of these are going to be businesses. You see large concentrations in the metro areas, obviously. But it's 2023. I'm no longer a young person in the industry. Like, this is not a battle we should still be fighting. But it's really convenient to have RDP open to the outside, because it's really easy to tell somebody how to do it. It's also really easy to attack it. So it's one of those things where we're talking about all these cybersecurity measures, and it's a little bit like the old analogy of you don't have to outrun the bear, you have to outrun your friend. It's the same thing, right? The goal of all of this is to not be the low-hanging fruit, right? Make yourself an inconvenient target. So don't be a dot on this Shodan map. So those are the 5 things. So we're at a point where you've done all those free things. You're solid on your configuration. You feel good about it. You've got some of the essentials, right? These aren't optional anymore. These are all required. These are all pay to play at this point. So next generation AV or EDR, MDR, whatever you want to call it. There's a few different flavors. Multi-factor authentication, off-site backups, off-site immutable backups. So you know your backups are good. You've got cyber insurance. Everybody has cyber insurance, right? Yep. Okay. Everybody has cyber insurance. Network segmentation is in order. Your firewall looks good. You don't have RDP open from the outside. You've got logging turned on all your Windows servers, on your domain, all your firewall, all that kind of stuff. And you've got good email protection in place. Your users are trained. So what's next? So what is next are additional things that may have a cost. Some come at a pretty heavy cost, but are things that are still required, that we still have to do, that we just do not see enough of in the organizations that we work with and that we consult with. So the first is a security risk assessment. It's required by HIPAA, right? We work largely in healthcare. Like I said, about 60 or 70% of our client base. So it's required, annual risk assessments. Other industries, finance has recurring audits they have to do. It's required, you have to have it. So one thing I do want to touch on at the top there, an SRA versus a pen test versus vulnerability scan. An SRA is a review of all of the cybersecurity pillars, if done correctly. You review your people and your training, you review your processes and how you do things, and then you review your technology and what all goes into your cybersecurity stack. So what some people will do, so a penetration test is different, right? A penetration test is an active or a user-backed attack to try to actively exploit vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Whereas a vulnerability scan is just, I'm going to plug in an IP address to, say, Shodan, for example, or there's a lot of other platforms out there that'll do it. And it's going to scan all your ports, it's going to tell me what's open, and it's going to maybe relate those to a CVE code or a CISA bulletin or something like that. Those are very different, they cost very different things. So there are people that will sell you a risk assessment or a pen test that is actually just kind of a free vulnerability scan. So if you go down this route in your business or in your future careers, make sure that you're getting an idea of what the deliverable is before you get a chance to, to sign and to pay for it. So the SRA is what tells you what you need to do next, right? If you're a brand new organization, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit to get a lot of bang for your buck. There's plenty of places I could tell you to start. But if you're an established organization, if you feel pretty good about your cybersecurity posture, the security risk assessment is the best way to determine where your weaknesses are and figure out where you need to go next. So the security risk assessment is part of creating a business impact analysis, which every organization should also have. And the business impact analysis is a document that is a prediction of likely attacks, likely vulnerabilities, and then a plan to combat or to recover from those issues. So as you complete the security risk assessment, you can use your industry framework if your industry has a framework, but NIST, CIS, COBIT, those will all guide you on how a risk assessment needs to go as well. There's guidelines to complete them. There's organizations that will do them for you out there. But the outcome of an SRA is the important part. So you can do it, but if you don't do anything with the data, you didn't really get any value out of it, and they're expensive. So what you create out of a security risk assessment is a plan of action and milestones, or a POAM. It's a living document, just like your other policies and procedures. It should have a list of all of the vulnerabilities that were discovered during the SRA, and it should have tracking where you can list what the remedy is, list when it's going to be implemented, and then track when it's completed. This is the document that you use for that year, or whatever your next time period is, to track your cybersecurity progress, set your budgets, set your goals, those kind of things. So, next one is Zero Trust. So Zero Trust for me is kind of the successor to Principle of Least Privilege. Zero Trust is not a new term. It was coined in like 2010 by a business analyst talking about something that wasn't cybersecurity. It's really been started being applied to the cybersecurity concepts in the last, say, 5 to 7 years. And whereas most historic Principle of Least Privilege and everything else is kind of the old trust but verify, Zero Trust is never trust, always verify. So no saved passwords, no saved authentication sessions. You will authenticate and re-authenticate every time you need to do something. It is very effective, and it can be very annoying. And we do this because the attack surface is no longer segmented behind the firewall, right? Our users are no longer in the building behind that hardened firewall. They're out in public, they're at client sites, they're at home largely. But I typically think of Zero Trust as the idea of whitelisting instead of blacklisting. So instead of saying we're going to block these things that we know are bad, right? Like a traditional AV would work, or like an ACL on a firewall would work, where you would say only what is allowed, and then you would deny all at the bottom. In this case, you will whitelist only what is allowed, and anything that does not appear on that list gets denied in whatever the activity that we're talking about is. So some examples of zero trust technical standards. To see this concept in practice is something like application control. There's software you can run on your desktop, on your network, that will list the business applications in use by your organization. And if anybody tries to install anything that's not on that approved list, they get an automatic deny and IT gets notified. So we're not blacklisting malicious software. We're not blocking the Facebook toolbar or whatever browser extension that we're blocking today. We're whitelisting what's allowed, and then everything else we don't care about because everything else is denied. So ring fencing is another concept. Ring fencing is kind of cool. It's kind of says these processes have the permission to do these things and nothing else. So think of it in terms like Microsoft Word has no business typically calling the PowerShell executable. So you can put virtual barriers or ring fencing in this case around those applications. And then things like storage control. Some next-gen AVs have this ability to, some of the zero trust software does, but you're able to get very granular on what kind of USB or external storage devices you allow. So things like, our organization only uses 128 gig Kingston flash drives or whatever, so you can get very specific. Again, the great thing about zero trust is it works great. The concept is fantastic. It is an administrative pain. It takes a lot of overhead to manage. It's very noisy. It's very inconvenient for the users. I'm sure that will improve as time goes on, but it is a bit of an undertaking to deploy. So log management is, so all of the major frameworks require log management. When we're talking about log management, we're talking about SIEM, security information event management. And it's basically a centralized logging location for all of your workstations, your servers, your mobile devices, everything. This is the security control that organizations love to pretend does not exist. And it's because it is very expensive and you have to retain data typically for a long time. So it's not something, it is probably the most ignored requirement that we see across a lot of the businesses that we try to work with. The importance of this is that it helps you create the attack story in the event of an issue. So it helps you track down what account was responsible for an attack or for an incident. It helps you determine the date that you were compromised. Terrence talked about, we're going to talk about it in a second too, but Terrence talked earlier about how long somebody's been in your network before they execute an attack. So you have to understand that attack story before you can move on to the recovery phase. So that leads into this, which is backups are great, you have to have them, but prevention is the key. And the reason is because nothing upsets your confidence in your backups like the concept of dwell time. And that's what Terrence mentioned earlier. Dwell time is the amount of time that an attacker has access to your network before they execute their primary attack. So personally, the worst one that I've worked was an organization that we were brought in to work with that had a dwell time, we found out towards the end, of 180 some odd days. So for 6 months, the attacker was in this network, had remote access to it. They set up SMTP servers and were sending out spam. They were reviewing storage locations where backups were stored. Attackers will actively target backup stores and local storage devices, those kind of things, to make you more likely to have to pay the ransom. And then a dwell time of 6 months. We talked about creating the attack story. So how do you know, if you don't have a logging system in place and you can't create that attack story, how do you know if you do a restore, a system restore, that you're not going to be restoring to a point where the attackers had access? So the reason, so if you say, well, if we get attacked, all our backups are off-site, we'll restore, we can be back up in a few hours, or maybe a day. That's great. The average length of an interruption of a ransomware attack is 21 days. That's a lot longer than, oh, we can be back up in a day. And the reason is because it takes time to develop that attack story, to figure it out, to understand what happened, and to determine, can I even use my backups? Or am I going to have to start from scratch? So the organization that I was talking about in the previous example, we're able to determine about when everything started, but not to a degree of confidence where we were okay with the backups. So we started from scratch. And it was, you take a 21-day disruption and it turned into a 6-week disruption. So reasons companies pay the ransom: faster recovery time, avoiding reputation damage, protecting sensitive data. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a lot of these ransomware attacks come with a threat of some kind of public data release, some type of public shaming or embarrassment, or we're going to release your data, or we're going to post it on the dark web for sale. So all of those types of reasons are factors that organizations consider when, even if they think they could recover, they may still pay the ransom because of that. I'm not telling you whether to pay the ransom or not. I wouldn't do that unless you asked, but I'll still give a political answer if you do. But 37% of organizations that pay the ransom don't recover all of their data. I've never worked with an organization that paid the ransom and got 100% of their data back. I've worked with organizations who have gotten most of it back, but never all of it. So the key, again, is prevention. So finally, this is the close, I promise. We just find that, I don't think it's specific to this region, I don't think it's specific to any industry, but we just find businesses still just don't take this serious enough as a threat. So very regularly in regulated industries that have specific compliance guidelines, we hear things like this that I'm going to equate to excuses, but I just need to check the box. What's the cheapest way I can check that box? I'm too small to be targeted. Nobody's interested in businesses in Western Kentucky. My data doesn't have any value. You've got employee data, you've got financial data, you've got banking data. Everybody's data has value. Personal data, business data. My data is safe because I'm in the cloud. You still have to back up cloud data. And we back up offsite so we can restore. That's great, but let's think back to the dwell time and to the average disruption time that we just talked about. So remember, from the earlier statistic slide, 40% of cybersecurity attacks are against SMBs. That doesn't make you a small target. That probably just means you have a small budget for IT, for cybersecurity compared to larger organizations. So like we said earlier, you don't want to be that low-hanging fruit. You don't want to be, you need to be better than your competitors and better than the organizations around you. So QR code will take you to a page to give some feedback. I'd be happy to hear from you if you have questions about, anything cybersecurity related. Students, if you have questions about internships, that kind of stuff. This will go to our marketing staff. He'll get it over to me, and we'll reply to anybody who has any questions. So, hey.
My phone's dead. Is that on the website?
Yeah, Thomas over there, if you yell at Thomas after the event, he just raised his hand, gray shirt, second row, he'll tell you what the actual link is. I don't know off the top of my head, but he'll get you where you need to go. Anybody else? Any questions? I can.
One good question.
Ooh.
Or one bad question. I will say that during that presentation, I noticed a lot of head nods, particularly when it was talking about senior leadership being the problem. And I will take payment after this is over and not tell said senior leadership when we're talking about it. Especially that row right there. I saw that row.
My senior leader didn't come. Otherwise, my presentation might have been a little bit different. So.
I don't have a question about it.
Yeah.
I gotta say, if 40% of companies have an incident response plan,
Yeah.
I'd be shocked.
Me too. Because
I'd be utterly shocked if it was higher than 10%.
it's funny because we were talking after the tabletop earlier, and I said, man, if that we had 50 people or something like that in the room, and I said, if this room is the data set and only one of them had it, that's not 40%. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, first of all, to everybody that scanned the QR code, if you're in my class, you just failed. You shouldn't trust him. You can't trust his QR code. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so last thing, we got to draw some tickets. Has everybody got their ticket out? Actually, I'll let you draw two. All right, we got two. First is for a Roku. Last three numbers, I'm going to assume everybody has the same first three. Last three numbers is 662. 662. Congratulations. And then a little drone. Six, 679. 679. Oh, those poor Marshall County High School kids that had to leave. No 679? There's still a chance. Six, 3, 4. They're talking bad about your senior leadership. Oh. All right, one more thing before we can leave. And I got to get my phone out to look at the date. I'm going to. Congratulations. Security matters. When we're done with IT matters, we have to start thinking about security matters. Security matters. April 25th in Murray. April 25th in Murray. We'll start probably about 8 o'clock. Love to have you out there. This will be, we'll host it like we did last year. We'll have everything in the ballroom. And we may have to move over to the small ballroom depending on how much bigger we get, or if we get bigger. But this is fantastic numbers. This is by far not only the most that I think that we have had at IT Matters, but it's also the most that have stayed for the entire day, and I appreciate that. We've had 4 fantastic presentations. My goal for a conference is always to learn something from each presentation, and I have done that for each presentation, and I hope you have as well. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you in April on our main campus for Security Matters. Thanks again to CFSB for co-hosting and System Solutions and AT&T for sponsoring. Thank you all.